Ethan, a name that sounds pretty classy, in the big game of family arranged marriages, was nothing more than a gilded tool. The ultimate mission of a tool was to become the legal husband of the Bennett Group's unattainable flower, Ms. Chloe. Chloe, a cool name, a cool person. Her face was carved like a finely crafted jade statue, but always frosted over, where her eyes swept across you. They could make you shiver in the heat of midsummer. In front of her, Ethan's presence was about the same as that expensive but perpetually ignored houseplant in her office. Ethan. The clear voice was like a drop of ice on a jade plate, interrupting Ethan's days by the window. He withdrew his gaze and looked toward the meticulous figure behind the wide desk. Chloe didn't even look up. Her fingertips moved across a tablet as if the call had merely summoned a voice assistant. "Order a bouquet from me," she said in a flat tone. "Deliver it to Liam's apartment. White roses, wrapped nicely. He pulled an all-nighter on the project yesterday. He worked hard." Liam, Chloe's indispensable assistant. In Chloe's world, Liam's name probably appeared only less often than quarterly report and board resolution. Ethan, the legitimate fiancé, he was probably after watering schedule for the office plant. Ethan tugged at the corner of his mouth and didn't answer. He leaned into an expensive Italian leather sofa, lounging with a casually roguish air that felt out of place in the elite, icy CEO office. Flowers? For Liam? His fiancée was practically the same as Chloe's personal secretary. No, at least the secretary got paid. Ethan was bringing his own snacks and subsidizing the relationship. Chloe didn't seem to need his response. Her fingers paused, and she added, "Reserve a table at the restaurant too. 7 o'clock tonight, Cloudview." Liam has a sensitive stomach. Tell the kitchen no spice in any dish. She finally raised her eyes and skimmed over Ethan, as if confirming whether he'd received the order. Remember? That look, calm and even, was neither the arrogance of ordering a subordinate around nor an ounce of warmth for a fiancé. It was more like handling a routine procedure. A vague, inexplicable irritation coiled like fine vines around Ethan's heart. His throat felt dry. The tip of his tongue pressed against his cheek as he suppressed a snide remark. He stood up. His height, well over 6 feet, carried a bit of pressure, but Chloe didn't so much as lift an eyelid. "All right, Miss Bennett." Ethan's voice carried a deliberate laziness, and he even smiled slightly. "White roses, no spice dinner. Ensure Mr. Carter's body and mind are pleased, so he can continue to shine for Bennett Group." He bit into the words Mr. Carter with a little emphasis. Chloe's brow twitched slightly, seemingly displeased by his slightly flippant tone, but that was all. Her attention quickly returned to the screen, and she responded with a cool at most. Ethan turned and strode out of the luxurious yet frigid office. The heavy wooden door closed soundlessly behind him, sealing off that icy world. Night fell like spilled ink, quickly soaking the whole city. Neon struggled to glow, blurring into smudges of light on the wet asphalt. The air was a mix of car exhaust, the metallic smell of rain-soaked earth, and a faint, indefinable restlessness that belonged to the city at night. Outside the Nightshade bar, Ethan leaned against the cold wall, a cigarette burned down past the halfway mark between his fingertips, the crimson ember flickering dimly. He inhaled deeply. The spicy smoke rolled down his throat, trying to smother the steadily fermenting, foul little fire called humiliation in his chest. Chloe's officious orders in the office, and the way she looked at him, more indifferent than at office supplies, played on loop in his head like a silent film. Liam is allergic to pollen. Liam's stomach is bad. Ethan, you go screw that. Ethan crushed the cigarette but hard against the nearby trash can. The cheap metal hissed as it burned. Family? Marriage alliance? Chloe? To hell with them all. He, Ethan, was still a person, not a puppet without a temper. He pushed through the heavy soundproof door of Nightshade. The deafening electronic beats, mixed with the scent of alcohol and hormones, hit him like a punch. The dance floor swam with bodies, disco lasers slicing the hazy air. Ethan threaded through the noisy crowd straight to the bar. "Whiskey neat." He tapped the counter. His voice vanished under the drumbeat. The bartender slid over a glass of amber liquid. Ethan tipped his head back and drained most of it in one gulp. The burning trail from throat to stomach numbed him briefly. Good, one more. He needed that blunt sensory jolt to wash the lousy mood away. At the edge of the booth area on the other side of the bar, a small figure caught Ethan's foggy attention. It was a girl, wearing an oversized white hoodie printed with a cartoon rabbit, the hood sagging softly, two skinny legs curled up on the booth seat. She hugged a giant beer glass that almost covered half her face, burying her small face in the rim, shoulders heaving. From a distance, her expression was unclear, but the gloomy "don't bother me" energy she radiated stood out in the raucous bar. What got him was Ethan squinted. Despite the slumped posture, the face revealed along the hood's edge was round and smooth, like a freshly shelled egg, with a pointed chin, delicately youthful even from afar. The vague contours under that oversized hoodie, and them quite something. Baby face with huge breasts? The thought popped into Ethan's head at the wrong time. The whole scene, the smoky bar, her presence, and that absurdly huge beer glass, created a kind of magical realist contrast. He was zoning out when the girl suddenly moved. She shot her head up as if making up her mind, struggled to lift the enormous beer glass with both hands, put the straw to her mouth, puffed out her cheeks, and sucked in a big gulp. Then, point, cough, 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 cough. A catastrophic coughing fit erupted. She sprang up as if yanked, her face flushed bright red, tears and snot smeared across it, coughing so violently it sounded like she was about to hack her lungs out, exactly like a little kitten that had swallowed a chili by mistake. A few nearby tables glanced over. Expressions varied. Ethan, his mouth twitched. He was half tempted to laugh, but mostly felt sorry for the poor kid. The liquid in the glass was so dark, it was almost black. Clearly not ordinary beer, probably some high-proof mixed liquor. She coughed until her eyes were watery, finally catching a breath. Her face screwed up. She looked around muddled, as if asking, "Who am I? Where am I? Why does this taste like poison?" She tried to stand, but her legs went weak and she slumped back into the booth, her head thunking against the backrest with a small cry of pain. Ethan looked at her pathetic, dizzy state and, as if guided by some impulse, walked over holding the half-finished glass of whiskey. "Hey, little sister," he stopped by the booth, his voice not loud amidst the blaring music. "Are you an adult? Imitating people and drinking this?" His tone carried a teasing note. He almost didn't notice himself, the kind that enjoys watching a spectacle. The girl heard him and turned her head in slow motion. Her moist, big eyes, like black grapes soaked in spring water, were fogged with heavy mist and confusion. She tried to focus. Her gaze wandered over Ethan's face a few times before barely settling. Then, something unexpected to Ethan happened. The little face flushed red from alcohol, and coughing suddenly lit up as if switched on, bursting into an enormous, silly, brilliant smile. She lunged out a small hand and grabbed Ethan's shirt hem with surprising force, nearly pulling him off balance. "Brother." Her voice was sweet and thick, with a heavy nasal twang that cut through the noisy background like a freshly baked cotton candy, smearing Ethan's face. "You're really handsome." Ethan, in his 20-plus years, it was the first time he'd been flirted with so bluntly and foolishly by a drunk little girl. Unbothered by his reaction, the girl giggled stupidly to herself, the other empty hand flailing wildly, her eyes shining astonishingly bright. "Brother, are you married?" Ethan instinctively shook his head, trying to pry his shirt free. "No." "That's great," she exclaimed, her voice suddenly pitched higher, full of the wonder of discovering a new world. Her grip on his shirt tightened. Her body swayed forward, the baby-plump pretty face drawing extremely close. Her warm, alcohol-scented breath nearly fanned his chin. Her eyes sparkled with a desperate, almost innocent mania. "Brother, let's get married," she announced loudly. each word like a honey-coated hammer, striking the numb nerves dulled by alcohol and gloom. I'm super sweet. Really. Not lying to you. Marry me, I guarantee you'll, She belched loudly, undeterred. Be sickeningly sweet. For a moment the air seemed to freeze. A few onlookers' gazes grew even hotter. Ethan was utterly stunned. His mind felt force-formatted by this earth-shattering proposal. Alcohol, Chloe's indifference, family pressure, the little face before him that screamed unreliable, yet was so vividly alive, a chaotic mix of emotions and images whirled rapidly in his head, ultimately stirring up an incredibly absurd, wildly crazy, yet fatally tempting idea. Fuck Chloe. Fuck the arranged marriage. Fuck being a pawn. He stared into the girl's moist, expectant, or drunken big eyes. Slowly, very slowly, the corner of his mouth began to lift. The smile was part roguish, part reckless surrender, and the rest pure all-or-nothing madness. All right then. He heard his own voice, carrying a strange calm, yet taut like a drawn string. Sweet, you mean it? The girl nodded instantly, pecking like a chick, nodding so hard she nearly fell in his arms. I mean it. Pinky promise. Liars are puppies. She stuck out her slender white pinky and made a sloppy hook in the air. Ethan chuckled low, his chest vibrating. He reached out, hooked his pinky around her wobbling little finger, and shook it hard. Deal. The next day, 10 o'clock in the morning. Top floor of Bennett Group. The air in the CEO's office maintained, as always, the comfortable 24 degrees produced by a precise temperature and humidity control system. Sunlight streamed through the huge floor-to-ceiling windows, cutting clear geometric patches of light and shadow across the carpet, which was immaculate. Chloe sat behind the wide desk in a perfectly tailored champagne-colored suit that made her skin look paler than snow and sharpened her already aloof temperament. She was looking down at a document, her fingertips occasionally swiping across the tablet screen with a faint, rhythmic sound. Liam stood to the side, slightly bowed, quietly reporting something with a respectful posture. Everything was orderly, like a finely tuned machine. Suddenly, bang! The heavy solid wood door was thrust open with brute force, making a loud noise that shattered the carefully maintained cold calm. Chloe and Liam looked up at the same time, frowning toward the door. Ethan stood in the doorway with one hand still on the door. He was wearing the same clothes as yesterday, his hair a little messy, faint shadows under his eyes, a bit of stubble on his chin. He looked as if he hadn't shaken off last night's hangover, but his eyes were astonishingly bright, like two searing flames. He strode in, his dress shoes sounding dull on the soft carpet. He headed straight for Chloe's desk with clear intent. Chloe's brow tightened. She put down the tablet, her voice carrying its usual chill and displeasure. Ethan? Are you out of your mind? This is the company. Her gaze swept over his disheveled appearance, and a flash of undisguised disgust passed through her eyes. Where were you partying again last night? Liam instinctively took half a step forward, as if to stand between Chloe and Ethan, but Chloe stopped him with a look. Ethan ignored her and went straight to the desk, his gaze lingering on Chloe's icy face for a second before a near-provocative curve lifted one corner of his mouth. He reached into his pocket and pulled out two small, square, red hardcover booklets. The movement was as casual as taking out a cigarette case. Then, under Chloe and Liam's astonished, puzzled, even slightly appalled stares, Ethan flicked his wrist smack. The two little red booklets, like featherlight yet heavy-hot branding irons, were thrown with precision and some force onto the expensive document in front of Chloe. Bright red and blinding. Chloe's eyes froze on those two little books. On the cover, the gilded national emblem and the three big characters marriage certificate were crystal clear, shining with an absurd yet undeniable reality under the cold desk lamp. The air seemed to be sucked dry. The faint hum of the climate system became the only background sound. Color drained from Chloe's face at a visible pace. The usually unruffled, exquisite features cracked for the first time. Shock, incredulity, the offended burn of fury. Emotions roiled violently in her eyes before settling into a cold, still pool. She snapped her head up, her gaze as sharp as an ice-bladed knife, driving into Ethan's face. Her voice, sharper than ever and with an almost imperceptible tremor, rang out, "Ethan, have you had enough of causing trouble?" That question finally broke the deathly silence in the office. Ethan slid his hands back into his pockets and leaned back slightly against the edge of the desk, looking down at Chloe's face. No longer an eternal iceberg, but written over with shock and anger. He exhaled a pent-up foulness he'd been holding for who knew how long. He tilted his head, and the roguish grin on his face not only didn't soften but deepened. His eyes held a bright, theatrical amusement. "Stir up trouble," he repeated slowly, dragging out the last syllable. "Ms. Bennett, you're accusing the wrong person. I hate making a fuss." He raised a hand and, with one finger, lightly tapped the two red booklets lying quietly on the table, his motion carrying a teasing, deliberately irritating calm. "Let me introduce." He turned his gaze to the doorway. His voice was soft but cut clearly through the whole office. "This is Ms. Sophia." Everyone's eyes instantly focused on the little head peeking in at the door. Sophia cautiously clung to the doorframe, showing only half her face. She still wore last night's oversized cartoon rabbit hoodie. Her hair was messily tied in a small knot. A few wisps playfully stuck to her temple. The hangover had left her face a bit pale and her eyes slightly puffy, but those big round eyes were astonishingly bright now, full of curiosity, excitement, and a hint of shy nervousness at being somewhere new. She looked like a sprite who had wandered into the adult world, completely out of place in this cold, stern CEO's office. Ethan reached out to her with an unprecedentedly gentle tone, a barely noticeable indulgence. "Come here." Sophia immediately brightened as if granted a pardon, a sweet smile blooming on her face. She hopped in like a little rabbit, ran to Ethan without hesitation, and threw her arms around the one he offered. Her gesture was natural and affectionate, utterly dependent. Ethan drew her into his arms, his arm naturally circling her shoulders, holding her close at his side. He looked down at the fuzzy top of Sophia's head, then raised his eyes to Chloe. The amusement and provocation in his gaze were now completely unapologetic. "This is," he deliberately paused, enunciating the next three words with perfect clarity, "Mrs. Johnson." Boom! Those words were like a bomb detonating in Chloe's ear. A rush of blood surged to her head. Her vision went dark for a moment. Her fingers pressed on the desk until her knuckles whitened, her perfectly manicured nails nearly digging into the hard surface. She stared fixedly at the girl nestled in Ethan's arms, who looked harmless, even a little silly, and then snapped her gaze to Ethan. The shock in her eyes was wholly replaced by a humiliated, furious rage. "Ethan!" Her voice warped with the intensity of her anger, shrill and piercing. "Do you know what you're doing?" I do." Ethan cut her off lightly, even soothingly pinching Sophia's shoulder as he felt the small body in his arms stiffen in an instant, whether from nerves or excitement, he couldn't tell. "Very clear. Get married, register it. Legal and proper, fair to all." He tipped his chin toward the red booklets on the desk. "Ms. Bennett want to check the authenticity? The seal's still warm." "You." Chloe's chest heaved violently. She was so furious she could hardly form a sentence. She had never imagined that the man she had always treated as a tool for an arranged marriage, someone she could ignore at will, would dare to be so brazen, so utterly reckless in slapping her in the face. This wasn't just betrayal. It was a total contempt and trampling of her, Chloe, and of the entire Bennett and Johnson family alliance. Her sharp gaze swept over Sophia like a searchlight, undisguised appraisal and scorn in it. Her? Just because of her? "Ethan, has your brain been shut in a door?" This meaningless. "Hello, sister," Sophia suddenly spoke, her voice crisp and loud, carrying an innocent, fearless charm that cut right through Chloe's aggressive words. She tilted her face up, her big eyes fluttering, wearing a genuinely friendly smile without a hint of guile. even cocking her head slightly. Her tone was so sincerely effusive it was almost outrageous. "So you're the legendary Ms. Bennett. You're so beautiful, so elegant. Even more impressive than the strong women on TV." She paused, as if only just realizing the unkindness in Chloe's earlier remark, furrowing her brows a little and puckering her lips to show a touch of grievance. "But what does not knowing her place mean? Does that mean I'm very cute?" As she spoke, she even gave Ethan's arm a questioning little shake. "Hubby, big sister is complimenting me, right?" Ethan, he nearly burst out laughing. "This sweet. Is she genuinely stupid or pretending?" That backhanded jab technique is utterly natural. Chloe was left speechless and choked by this sudden, non-sequitur praise and injured innocence. Her perpetually ice-cold face flashed in a spectacular display of emotion, turning red and then pale. The carefully maintained composure and poise nearly split. Looking at Sophia's naive, innocent expression, an angry heat surged and raged in her chest with no outlet for release. Liam, standing beside them, looked extremely unpleasant too. He watched Ethan's intimate arm around that unfamiliar girl, and then Chloe trembling with fury, his expression complicated. He opened his mouth as if to say something to ease the atmosphere or to defend Chloe, but under Chloe's almost murderous glare, he silently closed it again. The air in the office dropped below freezing, as if even the atmosphere had solidified into shards of ice. "Get out." Chloe spat the word through clenched teeth, her voice cold enough to freeze bone, her eyes like poison needles, stabbing Ethan and Sophia fiercely. "All of you get out." Ethan arched an eyebrow, unsurprised by the outcome. He even nodded with a certain grace, as if saying farewell. "All right then, Ms. Bennett, back to work." He draped his arm over Sophia's shoulders and walked away, his steps easy, even carrying a leisurely victor's air. At the door he seemed to remember something, paused, turned back, and gave Chloe, whose face had gone leaden, and Liam, whose expression was shadowed, an extremely bright, infuriating smile. "Oh, by the way," he added as an afterthought, "I booked the flowers in the restaurant. Ms. Bennett, remember to check. Don't worry, it's exactly as you requested. White roses, a no-spice restaurant, and I'll make sure Mr. Carter." He deliberately dragged out the last part, his gaze meaningfully sweeping over Liam, "is comfortable." Having said that, he no longer looked at the two ice statues about to explode in the room behind him. With his Mrs. Johnson in his arms, he left the suffocating office without looking back. The heavy door closed behind them, sealing off the freezing low pressure inside. The moment the door shut, Sophia let out an exaggerated, long sigh and slapped her chest theatrically. "Phew! That scared me to death. That pretty sister has such a strong aura. Her eyes are like knives." She tilted her face up, her big eyes flashing with a mix of lingering fear and excitement. "Hubby, would you say we just successfully cleared that level?" Ethan lowered his head to look at her vivid, post-disaster little face, and the last bit of gloom that Chloe had left in his heart suddenly vanished without a trace. He couldn't help reaching up to ruffle her messy hair. It was as soft as the fur of a small animal. A real smile flickered in his eyes, his voice softer than even he realized. "Level cleared, sweet." Sophia immediately brightened like a mouse that had found some oil, hugging his arm tighter and rubbing her cheek against his elbow. "Gee, that's great. Hubby, you're amazing." Ethan's heart stirred at her unabashed dependence and praise. A strange warm current slid through him. He led her to the elevator and pressed the down button. It was just the two of them inside. Sophia still seemed intoxicated by her victory, chattering away. "Hubby, where are we going now?" "Home. What does our home look like? Is there a soft, big sofa? A big TV? Can we watch foreign classic cartoons?" She was like a curious child, question after question. "Home." The word made Ethan pause. He owned a number of properties, but could those cold, fully furnished model apartments really be called a home? Looking at the lively, almost unreal little person chattering beside him, he felt, for the first time, a vague expectation toward that word. Yes, home. He pressed the button for the underground garage, his voice a little deeper. I'll take you to see us. Yay! Sophia cheered, then gave a small yawn. A bit of physiological tearing formed at the corner of her eyes as her head leaned against Ethan's arm. She mumbled sleepily, Hubby, I'm still a bit dizzy. That black drink last night tasted awful. Ethan looked down at the girl leaning against his arm, yawning with complete abandon. Sunlight poured in through the elevator's glass wall, casting a soft glow on her delicate cheek. Even the fine fuzz of hair was visible. Her long lashes, like small fans, cast a tiny shadow beneath her eyes and trembled slightly with each breath. The wide sweatshirt collar gaped just enough to reveal a sliver of slender, delicate collarbone, and below that, Ethan's Adam's apple moved unconsciously as he quickly shifted his gaze away. Last night in the bar, the lighting was dim, and with alcohol and chaos, his senses hadn't been clear. Now, in the bright daylight, he truly felt the impact of this picked-up wife in his arms. Her youthful face was really childlike, a palm-sized visage still holding traces of innocence. Her ample chest was by no means an empty reputation. The soft fabric of the oversized sweatshirt was pushed up into a proud, full curve in one area, rising and falling slightly with her breathing, pressing against his arm and transmitting a warm, soft touch and surprising bounce. Worse was the faint, sweet scent, mixed with a bit of shampoo freshness and the hazy after-smell of a hangover that drifted into his nose. Ethan felt his arm stiffen. He was a normal man, full of vigor. Holding such a soft, sweet, and naively innocent little beauty in his arms, to claim he had no physical reaction would be a lie. But the last remnants of reason and morality, admittedly slim, were sounding alarms. This girl was heavily intoxicated. Last night was pure drunken rampage, and who knew whether she'd remember anything today? Taking advantage of someone in that state, he would be less than a beast. He took a deep breath, forcing down his agitation, and tensed his arms slightly to try to straighten her up a bit and create some distance. Sophia murmured drowsily, made uncomfortable by his movements. Yet instead of moving away, she nuzzled into him like a kitten seeking warmth, pressing harder into his arms. She rubbed her little face against his arm, found a comfier position, and contentedly smacked her lips. Ethan, his body stiffened instantly. This sweet torment. The elevator dinged as it reached the underground garage. The doors opened and a chilly breeze flowed in. Ethan half-carried the clingy little koala out of the elevator. He found his understated black SUV, opened the passenger door, and with a bit of effort shoved her in and buckled the seatbelt. The moment Sophia hit the seat, her sleepiness deepened. Her head tilted to one side, long lashes resting softly, breathing slow, and even she fell asleep like that. Ethan stood outside the car door watching the peaceful sleeping face in the passenger seat and let out a long, silent exhale. He rubbed his slightly throbbing temples, walked around to the driver's seat, and started the car. The low growl of the engine echoed in the empty garage. The car drove out and merged into the noon traffic. Sunshine poured through the windows, warm over both of them. Ethan drove, his gaze drifting now and then to the sleeping girl beside him. She slept deeply, her mouth slightly parted, rosy lips like newly opened petals. The sun outlined her profile, gentle and beautiful. That innocence and unreserved dependence, like a beam of light, suddenly shone into the world he had filled with repression and calculation. Ethan tightened his fingers on the wheel. Some hard, cold corner in his heart seemed to melt a little under that warm light. He suddenly thought that maybe yesterday's crazy decision wasn't so bad after all. At least this unguarded sleeping face was far more pleasing to look at than Chloe's eternally icy expression. Ethan's apartment is in a quiet, upscale complex in the city center, a top-floor duplex with excellent views. The decor is stark, modern minimalism, large areas of black, white and gray, lines so crisp there's not a hint of domesticity, perfect for the image of a bachelor aristocrat. The fingerprint lock beeped and the door opened. Sophia stood in the doorway, mouth slightly open, eyes full of exclamation marks, like someone entering the Grand View Garden for the first time. Wow, she elongated the sound, giving a genuine exclamation. Her head turned this way and that as she surveyed the living room large enough to run a horse in. Beyond the massive floor-to-ceiling windows lay the bustling city skyline. "Hubby, your place is huge. So clean." She searched for adjectives and finally came up with clean. Clean? Ethan twitched the corner of his mouth. It was more like a high-end showroom, a model home, lacking warmth. Sophia bounded around like an excited fawn, slipped off her slightly dirty little white sneakers, and ran in barefoot, hopping twice on the cool, smooth marble floor. So cold, she scrunched her toes, then was attracted to the huge windows and flung herself toward them, pressing her face nearly against the glass to excitedly watch the ant-like cars and pedestrians below. Wow, it's so high. Hubby, look, doesn't that car look like a little beetle? Ethan watched her bubbling with energy and couldn't help the faint smile that appeared at the edge of his eyes. He set the shopping bags he'd been carrying on the entry cabinet, changed into slippers, and went inside. It does, he replied casually, and walked to the kitchen island to pour himself a glass of ice water. The hangover throb still nagged at him. Sophia walked around the living room once. The initial curiosity passed, and her attention quickly shifted to the pile of colorful snack bags on the kitchen island. Her eyes lit up as if she'd found a treasure. She ran over and started rummaging through the bags. Chips, chocolate, teddy bear cookies, and strawberry milk. She picked up the pink milk box and shook it happily. Hubby, you're the best. How did you know I like this? Ethan took a gulp of ice water. His Adam's apple bobbed. Guessing. Don't all girls like these sweet things? Sophia couldn't wait to open a bag of chips and crunched away, her cheeks puffed out like a little hamster. While eating, she mumbled indistinctly, Hubby, your place is nice. It's just a bit cold. She pointed at the bare walls. There aren't even any paintings. The TV is so big, it feels empty. She tilted her head to think, her big eyes sparkling as she looked at Ethan. Let's buy some things to decorate, like a fluffy rug, soft pillows, and a small fish tank with a few goldfish. The red kind. They look so pretty swimming. She grew more excited as she spoke, waving her arms and gesturing. Ethan watched this little person who was already planning a home renovation project in an instant, listening to her chirpy, domestic plans, and then at the cold, empty show home. A strange, never-before-felt feeling quietly began to grow. Maybe adding some of these things wouldn't be so bad? Before he could answer, Sophia's phone, tucked in her hoodie pocket, suddenly started vibrating like crazy. The ringtone was that extremely catchy, childish daddy's daddy is grandpa. Sophia's movements froze instantly. The smile on her face solidified and the crunching stopped. It was as if someone had hit the pause button. A clear trace of panic flashed in her wide eyes. She fumbled for her phone and saw the caller ID wildly flashing. Old Chief. And her little face immediately fell, gloomy. She looked up at Ethan with a pitiful expression like a puppy about to be abandoned, her voice breaking with a whimper. Oh no. Hub, my dad. He's coming after me. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Old Chief. That title, interesting. So Sweet's blackout wedding yesterday wasn't without reason. Sophia inhaled deeply as if preparing to go to the gallows, her fingers trembling as she swiped to answer and held the phone carefully to her ear. Hello, Dad. Her voice was pathetic. From the other end blasted an amazingly loud, booming roar. Even without speakerphone, Ethan could make out a few keywords. You damn girl. Not coming home at night. Getting cocky. Where? Right now. Immediately. Get your ass back here and explain yourself, or I'll break your legs. The shout was so thunderous and penetrating that the whole empty living room seemed to tremble 3 times. Sophia shrank her neck from the roar and held the phone farther away, her little face screwed up as she weakly defended herself into the receiver. Dad, please don't shout. I'm okay. I'm at a friend's house. Friend? Which friend? Male or female? The address. Report the address now. I'll come pick you up myself. The old chief, on the other end, clearly didn't believe her and was firing on all cylinders. Sophia stamped her foot in panic and shot a pleading look at Ethan, her eyes begging, "Help me, hubby. Think of something." Ethan looked at his little wife's tearful face and listened to the thunderous roaring on the phone, and suddenly found it a little funny, and also a subtle sense of shared misery. Both were being driven into a corner by their families. He held out his hand to Sophia, signaling her to give him the phone. Sophia, as if clutching a lifeline, immediately shoved the hot potato of a phone into Ethan's hand. Ethan cleared his throat and put the phone to his ear. On the other end, Arthur's bellowing continued. "Can you hear me? Speak. Are you mute? Mr. Arthur, hello." Ethan spoke, his voice steady and low, carrying a natural calming presence. The roar on the other end stopped abruptly, as if someone had pressed a mute button. After several seconds of deathly silence, Arthur's voice sounded again, noticeably reduced in volume, but still full of vigilance and pressure, like a lion whose territory has been invaded. "Who are you?" Ethan glanced down at Sophia beside him, her little fists clenched tightly in nervousness, eyes pleading at him. He reached out and naturally took her slightly cool hand, their fingers interlacing. Sophia's hand was small and soft, completely enveloped by his dry, warm hand. He felt the fine sweat that instantly seeped from her palm and the slight, dependent tremor. Ethan squeezed that small hand, lifted his eyes, and looked calmly toward the huge floor-to-ceiling window. Outside was a vast sky and a bustling city. Speaking clearly and syllable by syllable to the old chief on the other end, he said, "I'm Ethan, Sophia's husband." A longer silence fell on the other end. Dead quiet, as if even the signal had frozen. Ethan could even imagine the brilliant expression on the face of the unseen old chief. Shock? Rage? Disbelief? Time ticked by, each second stretched out. Just as Ethan wondered whether the other man had been fumed into a stroke, Arthur's voice finally came back. It sounded squeezed out from between his teeth, low, suppressed, yet carrying the terrifying pressure of an approaching storm. Address. Now, immediately. No roaring, no questions, just these 4 brief words, which made one's heart sink even more than the earlier shouting. Ethan remained expressionless and gave the apartment address. He could even hear heavy, restrained breathing from the other end. "Wait." Arthur dropped the last 2 words, and the call was cut off decisively, leaving only a string of busy tones. Beep, beep, beep. The busy signal sounded especially shrill in the empty living room. Sophia's face went deathly pale. The little courage she'd drawn when Ethan took her hand evaporated instantly. Her big eyes filled with terror, and her voice trembled. It's over. Husband, my dad. He's definitely gone crazy. Will he really break my legs?" He really did break the leg of the family's mastiff before. The more she thought about it, the more frightened she became, her small body beginning to shake. Ethan put down the phone and looked at his little wife, who was scared like a quail, partly helpless, partly amused. He raised his hand and pinched her thin cheek. "What are you afraid of? If your leg gets broken, I'll support you." His tone was a bit of carefree teasing, but his eyes were sincere. Sophia froze at the pinch, staring at him dazedly, seemingly stunned by the words, "I'll support you," even momentarily forgetting her fear. Ethan glanced around his cold, lifeless model home, then at the lively little person beside him who was about to face a storm, and his mind made a decision. He took out his phone, dialed a number, and his tone, usually commanding, carried a barely noticeable urgency. "It's me. Prepare the villa at Yunjing Villa immediately. Furniture and soft furnishings. Style it. Style it like what young girls like. Arrange it as soon as possible. Stock all daily necessities and send them over right away. You have 2 hours." After hanging up, he pulled the still-dazed Sophia along. "Let's go." "Huh? Where?" Sophia, being dragged out, asked in confusion. "Moving." Ethan said succinctly. Change the battlefield. This place, he glanced disdainfully at the cold living room, can't withstand your old chief's anger. Yunjing Villa, in the West District's high-end villa area, was tranquil amid bustle and pleasantly secluded. The detached villa under Ethan's name was seldom used. It was only maintained and cleaned periodically. When they drove up, people were already busy inside. Efficient. The huge crystal chandelier in the living room cast a warm glow. The originally stark black-white-gray palette had been softened by a warm beige rug, a goose-yellow velvet sofa, various fluffy cushions, and brightly colored abstract paintings. The air carried a faint, pleasant scent of new furniture and new carpet. Sophia gasped again. Her big eyes sparkled as if she'd discovered a new land, her earlier fears somewhat diluted by curiosity. Hubby, this is so cozy. It feels like home. She let go of Ethan's hand and, like a happy little bird, ran around the living room, touching the soft sofa, hugging a giant plush bear, then ran to the floor-to-ceiling window to look at the carefully tended little garden outside. Ethan watched her retreating figure and felt the tautness in his nerves ease a little. At least this battlefield didn't look like it could be overturned easily. He had just sat down on the sofa to catch his breath when the doorbell rang. Ding dong, ding dong. The sound was crisp, but it struck both of them like a hammer. Sophia froze as if under a spell, her face paling in an instant. She looked toward the door in terror, then to Ethan for help. Ethan straightened his collar and stood, his expression calm. What was meant to come would come. He walked over and opened the heavy solid wood door. Outside stood a burly tall man. Around 50, he wore a well-tailored dark tang jacket. His square face, thick brows, and eyes were sharp as a hawk's, commanding without anger. Half a step behind him stood a well-kept, gentle-tempered middle-aged beauty, her brows and eyes somewhat similar to Sophia's. She looked into the doorway with a face full of worry. They were Sophia's old chief and Ms. Margaret, Arthur and Margaret. Arthur's gaze, like a searchlight, instantly swept past the opening Ethan and locked precisely on the stiff figure of Sophia in the living room. That look was heavy, carrying scrutiny, anger, and an almost imperceptible worry. Dad, Mom. Sophia's voice was as thin as a mosquito's. Her little head nearly sank to her chest. Arthur did not answer. His sharp gaze finally returned to Ethan, who stood blocking the door. The look carried a powerful pressure as it scanned him up and down, as if assessing the value and risk of an object. You are Ethan? Arthur said, his voice low and bearing the authority of someone long accustomed to being in charge. Not a question, but a statement. Mr. Arthur, Ms. Margaret, I'm Ethan. Ethan was neither obsequious nor arrogant. He sidestepped and made room. Please come in. Arthur snorted coldly and strode in with measured steps, Margaret following closely, her worried gaze flicking between her daughter and Ethan. The atmosphere in the living room instantly dropped to a frosty low. The newly arranged cozy decor couldn't dispel that invisible pressure. Arthur stopped in the center of the living room, his eyes sweeping over the villa that was clearly just set up, then settling on Ethan's face with even sharper scrutiny. Ethan? The kid from Johnson's. He clearly knew Ethan's background. My daughter was crying at home yesterday, and today she's already Mrs. Johnson on your household register. Mr. Johnson, your methods are efficient. Huh? The final huh rose in tone, thick with suspicion and derision. Sophia flinched in fright and instinctively tried to hide behind Ethan. Ethan stepped forward instead, subtly positioning Sophia at his side and back, meeting Arthur's appraising gaze with a calm tone. Mr. Arthur, you're overstating it. Sophia and I are legally registered. We love each other. This is not a game. Love each other? Arthur seemed to have heard the biggest joke, a cold smile curling at his mouth. Before yesterday, did my daughter even know who you were? Ethan, don't think I don't know about the Johnson family. You couldn't force a marriage on that miss from the Bennett family, so you turned your sights on my daughter, using her as a shield? Do you take my Taylor family for nothing? Dad, that's not true. Sophia panicked, mustering courage to poke her head out from behind Ethan. It was me. I proposed to my husband first, in a bar. He agreed because he felt sorry for me. It's not his fault. Shut up. Arthur spun around fiercely and roared, scaring Sophia back. Her eyes instantly reddened. Margaret, distressed for her daughter, hurried forward and grabbed her husband's arm. Arthur, talk this out. Don't frighten the child. Arthur shook his wife's hand off, his anger intensifying. Talk it out? How am I supposed to? Look at what she's done. A bar? A proposal? Feeling sorry. Sophia, did I raise you to run to a bar, get drunk, and marry the first man you find? Are you out of your mind? He grew more furious, his chest heaving violently as he pointed at Ethan. And you, Ethan, I don't care what your intentions are. This marriage now, immediately. Get a divorce. Impossible. Ethan's voice was quiet but exceptionally clear and resolute, carrying an unquestionable force that instantly overpowered Arthur's fury. Arthur glared at him, his eyes like knives. Ethan met his stare without fear, enunciating each word firmly. Mr. Arthur, the marriage certificate is real. Sophia is now my wife, Ethan's wife. As long as she is willing. He tilted his head slightly, glancing at Sophia behind him with reddened eyes and bitten lips, his gaze asking and reassuring. As long as even one day she is my wife, I, Ethan, will protect her for that day. Anyone who wants to harm her, including you. His eyes swung back to Arthur, suddenly razor-sharp and intimidating. Will have to ask my permission first. Those words were audacious. Audacious to the extreme. The living room fell utterly silent. Even the air seemed to freeze. Arthur stared fixedly at Ethan, those hawk-like eyes boiling with fury. Yet strangely, beneath that towering wrath there seemed to flit a faint, almost imperceptible scrutiny, even an indescribable admiration. This kid has guts, daring to confront him, Arthur, to his face. How many years has it been since he'd seen such a reckless, death-defying youngster? Margaret was stunned too. She looked at Ethan with his resolute, protective stance, then at her daughter being shielded behind him, afraid but instinctively clutching Ethan's sleeve, and her expression became profoundly complicated. Sophia was utterly dazed. She tilted up her small face and dazedly watched Ethan's broad, upright back. That silhouette seemed like a solid barrier, holding her safely behind it. His words, "I'll protect her completely for a day," still echoed in her ears, bringing a kind of heart-stopping security she'd never felt before. Her heart pounded uncontrollably in her chest, like a lively little rabbit, and her cheeks inexplicably began to burn. So, being protected, being firmly chosen, felt like this? The muscles on Arthur's face twitched violently a few times, clearly suppressing the impulse of a volcanic eruption. He stared at Ethan as if he wanted to tear him apart. After a suffocating few seconds of silence, he suddenly flung out his hand, laughter turning from fury to scorn, his low laugh dangerous. "Fine. Very fine. You Johnson brat, you've got nerve." He stopped looking at Ethan and turned his sharp gaze to the girl he'd been shielding behind him, his tone more severe than ever. "Sophia, you're coming home with me right now. This isn't over. Dad." Sophia recoiled in fright, her small hand grinding desperately on Ethan's sleeve as if clutching a lifeline, her head shaking like a rattle. "I'm not going back. I'm married. This is my home." Her voice trembled with sobs, but she was unusually firm. Ew. Arthur's anger at his daughter's treachery made his vision black at the edges. Margaret hurried forward to steady her husband, patting his back to calm him while anxiously looking between her daughter and Ethan, her eyes full of conflict and worry. "Sophia, be sensible. Come home with Mom. We can talk about anything at home. Your father is worried too, Mom." Tears welled in Sophia's eyes as she looked at her mother's anxious face, and then at Ethan standing silently, but immovably like a mountain beside her. Inside, she was torn. At that moment Ethan spoke, his voice steady, breaking the stalemate. "Mr. Arthur, Mrs. Margaret. He gave a slight nod, lowering his stance a bit, though his protective posture around Sophia didn't change in the least. I know you two love your daughter, and it's hard to accept this. I acted hastily and didn't consider things fully. But what's done is done. He paused, looking at Arthur and Margaret with honest eyes. Sophia is emotionally unstable right now. Forcing her to go back will only make her more frightened and won't help. Let her calm down here. I promise you both I would never harm her in the slightest. Once everyone has cooled off, I will call on you properly, accept responsibility, and give you an explanation. How about that? Those words provided an exit for both sides. He made his stance clear. He wouldn't let her go, yet lowered himself, willing to take responsibility and offer an explanation. Arthur's face was ashen, his chest heaving violently, clearly still on the verge of rage. Margaret looked at her daughter's hand gripping Ethan's sleeve, then at the unquestioning protectiveness in Ethan's eyes. After a moment's weighing, she gently tugged her husband's sleeve and whispered, "Arthur, how about for now? Let Sophia calm down. We can talk another day." Arthur glared at Ethan so fiercely the look seemed to carve his image into bone. In the end, he snorted heavily through his nose, tacitly agreeing to his wife's suggestion. He no longer looked at Sophia, turned, and with a terrifyingly heavy aura strode toward the door. Margaret glanced at her daughter with worry, then looked at Ethan with mixed feelings, sighed, and hurried after them. The heavy solid wood door slammed shut with a bang, cutting off everything outside. In the living room, only Ethan and Sophia remained. The taut atmosphere suddenly relaxed. Sophia seemed to have all her strength drained. Her legs buckled, and she nearly collapsed. Ethan was quick and scooped her up, half carrying her onto the soft sofa. "You scare me to death." Sophia slumped into the sofa, her face pale, patting her chest and gasping, still shaken. "My dad just now, that look. I thought he was going to eat someone." Ethan sat down beside her and relaxed, a thin sweat on his back. Dealing with an old chief like Arthur was more exhausting than negotiating billions of dollars. He poured a glass of water and handed it to Sophia. "Drink some water. Calm yourself." Sophia took the cup and gulped down more than half before recovering. She set the cup down, turned to the side, and with wide, unblinking eyes looked at Ethan. Her gaze sparkled, full of gratefulness at surviving a fright and an indescribable radiance. "Husband," she called softly and sweetly, with a hint of nasality, like a spoiled little cat. Ethan replied and turned to look at her. Suddenly Sophia pounced, her slender arms clamping tightly around Ethan's neck, her whole body hanging on him like a koala. Ethan froze instantly. The girl's soft, fragrant body pressed against him with no gap. Her warm breath brushed his neck, carrying her unique sweetness. The astonishingly soft curve pressed tightly against his chest. "Husband, you were so handsome just now," Sophia whispered excitedly in his ear, rubbing her face against his nape. "Thank you. Thank you for protecting me. I was nearly terrified to death." Her voice was thick and clingy, filled with absolute dependence and adoration. Her warm breath sprayed over his sensitive skin. Boom! A rush of heat shot up from his lower abdomen and swept through his body. Ethan felt all his blood flood to one place. His breathing suddenly grew heavy. He nearly lost control, but managed with all his strength to restrain himself. This sweetness was killing him. He took a deep breath and forced down the surging desire, somewhat embarrassed, and almost half pushing, half carrying the little koala hanging on him off, pressing her back onto the sofa, his voice slightly hoarse and barely noticeable. "Sit properly. What are you doing?" Sophia, pressed back onto the sofa, looked a little dazed, her mouth slightly open, eyes innocent as if accusing him of pushing her away. Seeing her naive yet tempting manner only stoked the fire in Ethan. He suddenly stood up abruptly, knocking over the nearby cup. Water spilled everywhere. I'll go to the study to handle something." He left that sentence behind and almost ran away, striding up to the study on the second floor, his retreating figure showing haste and embarrassment. If he stayed any longer, he really feared he would turn into a beast. Sophia stared blankly until he disappeared at the top of the stairs, then looked down at the water spilled on the floor. Her brows furrowed slightly as she muttered softly, "Hubby, why is he acting weird? Could it be he was scared by my dad?" She tilted her head, thought for a moment, and then brightened up again. A sweet smile returned to her face as she talked to herself. "Doesn't matter. Hubby is the best anyway." She stood up and hopped off to find a cloth, humming a tuneless little song. In the study, Ethan leaned against the cold door, closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and tried to calm the restless fire inside him. In his mind, one moment was Chloe's cold gaze, the next was Arthur's furious face, and finally it fixed on the warm, fragrant little person in his arms, on her big bright eyes full of dependence and adoration. He irritably ran his fingers through his hair and cursed under his breath. "Fuck, Ethan, you're fucking insane." The following days were like a bizarre, yet overly sweet reality show. This energetic little treasure completely took over Ethan's formerly cold villa. A fluffy cloud rug covered the living room floor, the sofa piled with oddly shaped cushions, and a huge TV screen looped foreign classic cartoons. The kitchen filled with the smell of instant noodles, takeout fried chicken, and the occasional burnt scent from failed baking experiments. Ethan went from initial discomfort to gradual numbness, and later, weirdly finding that this noisy, lively domesticity seemed far more interesting than the stagnant, aristocratic life he used to have, especially when this little treasure, clutching a bag of chips and barefoot, came pattering over and insisted on squeezing onto the sofa with him to watch classics. When she saw a character who silently guarded the protagonist and would redden her eyes, sniffle, nuzzle into his arms, and mutter, "Hubby, he's kind of like you. Even though he's sometimes grumpy, he's actually good." Ethan, he looked down at the furry head in his lap, then at the silent character on the screen, his mouth twitching. Like him, Ethan, of all people, never mind, why argue with a drunk? He resigned himself and adjusted his position so she could lean more comfortably. The warm, soft bundle in his arms smelled of sweet milk and chips when she breathed. Not bad, actually. But whenever late at night Little Treasure stood at his bedroom door in that Pikachu-printed sleepwear with an oversized neckline that revealed delicate collarbones and hints of spring, clutching a pillow and rubbing her eyes as she softly asked, "Hubby, I'm so scared to sleep alone. Can I?" It was an inhuman torture to Ethan's willpower. Beast. Worse than a beast? That was the question. At times like that, Ethan would expressionlessly and mercilessly grab the back of her shirt like a naughty kitten, carry her back to her own room, slam the door with a bang, and press his back hard against it, listening to the pitiful little grumbles outside while engaging in deep and painful self-reflection. Those days were painful yet happy. On Chloe's side, however, there was a deathly quiet before the storm. Since that shocking fall in the office, she hadn't contacted Ethan again. Family pressure? That too seemed to have strangely vanished. Ethan enjoyed the peace, throwing himself wholeheartedly into, well, the great cause of feeding and resisting Little Treasure's temptations. That lasted until a grim Friday afternoon. Ethan had just finished a long video meeting and stepped out of his study, rubbing his throbbing brow. In the downstairs living room, Sophia was sitting cross-legged on the carpet, facing a tablet, her little face twisted in a frown as she sighed. "What's wrong?" Ethan walked over, sat beside her, and casually reached out to smooth her fluffy hair. Sophia, looking woeful, pushed the tablet toward him. "See, our advisor, a demon. We have to submit the data analysis report for this model next week. It's so hard. I'm about to peel my scalp." The screen showed a bunch of complicated charts and formulas. Ethan glanced at it. For someone with a finance background, it wasn't too difficult. "What part don't you get? Let me see." Sophia's eyes lit up. She immediately scooted closer as if she'd found a savior, pointing at the screen with a small finger. "Here. And here. How do you do this regression analysis? And this significance test?" She leaned in close, her faint sweet scent drifting over again, hair brushing Ethan's arm. Ethan steadied himself, took the tablet and stylus, and tried to ignore the slight tickle on his arm as he began to explain. His voice was low and clear. Complex models became simple and lucid under his pen. Sophia listened intently, her little head nodding now and then, emitting occasional enlightened "oh" sounds. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, bathing them and casting a silhouette of them leaning together on the carpet. The air held only Ethan's low explanations and Sophia's occasional questions. The atmosphere was peaceful and warm. Just then, the doorbell rang abruptly. Ding dong, ding dong. Ethan's explanation stopped mid-sentence. Sophia looked up too, puzzled toward the door. Huh? At this hour? Who could it be? A delivery? She was about to get up. I'll get it. Ethan put a hand on her to stop her, rose, and walked to the door. A vague premonition stirred in his chest. The screen of the video doorbell showed a familiar yet cold face. Chloe. She wore a sharply tailored black suit, her long hair neatly pinned up, revealing a long, fragile-looking neck. Her complexion was a bit pale, with faint shadows under her eyes and her lips pressed tight. Those always cool, placid eyes now looked like a storm-tossed sea, surging with complex, hard-to-read emotions, fatigue, struggle, and a hint of a last-ditch gamble. Ethan frowned slightly. What was she here for? To scold him? To speak on behalf of the family? He pressed the call button, his voice calm and steady. Ms. Bennett, is something the matter? On the screen, Chloe seemed to inhale deeply before speaking. Her voice came through the intercom, tense, as she tried to keep calm. Ethan, open the door. Let's talk. Sophia curiously leaned closer, standing on tiptoe to look at the screen. Who is it, honey? When she recognized Chloe's face on the screen, she exclaimed in surprise, That pretty sister? Ethan glanced at Sophia and then back at the clearly distressed Chloe on the screen. Hesitating for a moment, he still pressed the button to open the door. Some things can't be avoided. The villa's heavy carved iron gate slowly slid open. Chloe stepped in, clicking in her stiletto heels, each step graceful yet weighed down by a palpable fatigue. She stepped into the living room, her gaze first sweeping over the space, completely different from the Ethan she remembered, filled with warm tones and a lived-in feel. Her eyes stalled for a moment, then fell on Ethan and Sophia standing side by side. Her look lingered on Ethan for an instant, complicated beyond description, and finally settled on Sophia. It was an appraising look with a faint, barely noticeable jealousy and a heavy, inextinguishable fatigue. Sophia felt uncomfortable under her stare and instinctively edged behind Ethan, her small hand quietly clutching the hem of his coat. Ms. Bennett, to what do we owe the honor? Ethan said, his tone distant, carrying a chill that kept people at bay. Chloe's gaze finally left Sophia and refocused on Ethan's face. She didn't answer immediately, only watched him silently, her eyes seeming to pierce through time, weighted with something heavy. The living room was silent, the only sound a rustle of leaves outside as the wind passed. After what felt like an eternity, Chloe spoke slowly. Her voice was no longer the cold, steady tone it used to be. It was dry and hoarse, as if she hadn't spoken in a long time, or as if something choked her throat. Ethan, she called his name, very softly, but it struck the stagnant air like a heavy hammer. She took a step forward. Her high heel clicked clearly on the polished floor. Her gaze fixed on Ethan's eyes, surging with countless fierce emotions that finally converged into a bottomless pain and regret. Her lips trembled, as if she were using every ounce of strength to squeeze those fractured syllables from the depths of her throat. I regret it. The words were soft, yet they detonated in the living room like thunder. Ethan's pupils instantly constricted. He almost thought he had misheard. Regret? Chloe? That Chloe who'd always been so aloof and who treated him as if he were nothing. Was she saying regret? Sophia also stared wide-eyed, her mouth slightly open. She glanced at Chloe, then at Ethan, and gripped his coat even tighter. Chloe seemed to have dropped 1,000-pound weight. Then, as if all her strength had been drained, her body swayed slightly. She looked at Ethan with a fragile, pleading in her eyes, her voice trembling with a sob. "Ethan, I know I was wrong before. I ignored you, used you. She seemed unable to continue. Clear tears slid unexpectedly from those always cold eyes down her pale cheeks. Choking on her words, incoherent, she said, "I regret it. I really regret it. Can we start over?" Her proud head, at this moment, to win back a man she once discarded like trash, bowed. Tears, a sign of weakness that would never have appeared on her, had been unleashed. The living room was as silent as death. Only Chloe's suppressed sobs could be heard. Ethan looked at the woman before him, face streaked with tears, begging in a lowered voice. The turmoil in his chest was not joy or satisfaction, but an extremely complex, almost absurd feeling. The ice-sculpted beauty he once had to look up to and cautiously appease was breaking down and crying in front of him, saying she regretted it. How ironic. He remained silent, offering no response. Seconds ticked by, Chloe's sobs sounding unusually clear and embarrassing in the hush. Just then, hubby. A crisp, slightly puzzled, sweet voice, like a lively brook, suddenly broke the heavy silence. Sophia was holding a delicate little tray with 2 pretty glass bowls on it, piled high with scoops of ice cream drizzled in chocolate sauce and rainbow sprinkles, like 2 miniature snowy peaks. She bounded over from the kitchen like a joyful fawn, her face radiant with the look of someone offering a precious gift. She ran to Ethan's side, completely ignoring the extra person in the living room and the strange atmosphere, and thrust the tray toward Ethan as if presenting a treasure. "Try it. I just bought this ice cream. Strawberry and vanilla combo. Super tasty." Only then did she seem to notice there was a third person in the living room. Tilting her head, her gaze passed over Ethan and landed on Chloe, whose tears hadn't dried, makeup smudged, expression frozen. Sophia's clear, bottomless eyes instantly filled with pure innocence and unguarded curiosity. She tilted her head slightly, long lashes fluttering, her little face written all over with "this lady looks weird" bewilderment. Then, in a voice so bright and innocent it could quiet the whole world, sweet and loud, she asked, "Husband, who is this lady who looks so sad and is crying?" Boom! The color drained from Chloe's face in an instant. Pale as paper. "Lady. Crying sadly, lady." Those 2 words struck Chloe's heart like 2 poison ice picks, more devastating than any of Ethan's cold rejections. All her fragility, all her remorse, all her humiliating pleas had been torn to shreds by that single innocent lady. Only naked, unbearable shame remained. She suddenly lifted her head and looked in utter disbelief at the girl holding the ice cream, her face innocent and bewildered. Her look flashed from shock and humiliation to a consuming rage. That fury seemed ready to burn Sophia to ashes. Ethan's scalp tingled at Sophia's unexpected move. He lowered his head to look at his little wife. Sophia was tilting her face up, her big eyes fluttering, her gaze as clear as mountain spring water, as if she were genuinely and simply curious about who this crying stranger was. Was she doing it on purpose? Or a fatal innocent blunder? Either way, the effect was nuclear. Chloe's body trembled violently, her carefully manicured nails digging into her palms. She glared at Sophia with a look so venomous it seemed forged from snakes and scorpions. She opened her mouth, as if to hurl a sharp curse, but extreme anger and humiliation gripped her throat like an invisible hand, allowing only broken, gasping sounds. "Ha-ha. You," she stammered, pointing at Sophia, her fingertips shaking. Sophia was startled by the hideous expression, instinctively shrinking into Ethan's embrace, burying her face in his chest and only exposing a pair of frightened wide eyes. Timidly she muttered in a small voice, "Husband, this lady is so fierce. Does she not like my ice cream?" "Ethan, Chloe, Chloe almost spat a mouthful of blood. Enough. Chloe finally found a scrap of voice through the crushing shame and fury. It cracked sharp and hoarse. She spun toward Ethan, her eyes wild with the sense of complete betrayal and trampling. Ethan, you're just going to let her humiliate me like this? Ethan looked at the shivering little wife in his arms, then at the crazed-looking Chloe across from him, and felt this whole farce was utterly absurd. He raised his hand and patted Sophia's back reassuringly, then lifted his eyes to Chloe, his expression calm and even tinged with a faint weariness. "Ms. Bennett," he began, his voice flat. "Sophia is young and speaks without thinking. She meant no harm." He paused, his gaze sweeping over Chloe's disheveled state, his tone indifferent. "As for humiliation, Ms. Bennett, you're overthinking. She simply doesn't know you. Simply doesn't know you." The light, casual words landed like a final heavy blow, shattering all of Chloe's pride and illusions. In his heart, Chloe had become a complete stranger, someone who didn't even know his new wife. Chloe stumbled back a step, the color draining completely from her face, her eyes hollow as if her soul had been sucked out. She watched Ethan, watched the way he sheltered that girl, watched the natural intimacy between them. A tidal wave of enormous regret and despair, cold as ice, instantly overwhelmed her. She had lost, utterly and completely, so badly that even her dignity was gone. She laughed bitterly, tears welling up again, this time a complete breakdown. "Ethan, you're ruthless." She no longer looked at anyone, like a puppet drained of strength, staggering away in a daze toward the villa's entrance. Her high heels clicked on the polished floor with a chaotic, grating sound. Each step felt like crushing her shattered pride, utterly devoid of any former elegance. Bang! The heavy wooden door was slammed shut behind her, making the frame tingle and completely cutting off the warm, sweet-scented space she'd left. The living room fell silent in an instant, leaving only the faint, cool perfume of Chloe lingering in the air, gradually being overtaken by the cloying sweetness of the ice cream. Sophia poked her head out from Ethan's arms, peeked cautiously at the closed door, then lifted her face. Her big eyes still held a trace of fear, her small brows furrowed slightly as she murmured, "Hubby, why did she run off so fast? Does she really not like my ice cream? I even left a bowl for her." She looked down at the bowl on the tray, where the ice cream was already starting to melt, confusion and regret written all over her little face. Ethan looked down at the innocent face in his arms and gently wiped a bit of chocolate sauce from the corner of her mouth with his fingertip, his movements inexplicably tender. Chloe's earlier breakdown was still vivid in his mind, yet looking at Sophia's naive concern over the ice cream, the complex emotions stirred by past entanglements strangely dissipated, leaving only indulgent exasperation. "Maybe she had something urgent," he said, rubbing the soft crown of Sophia's head in a low, gentle voice. "Don't worry about her. Let's eat ours. Your strawberry vanilla swirl will melt if you don't eat it." "Oh, right." Sophia brightened immediately, the little episode forgotten in an instant. She sat on the carpet with her bowl, legs tucked up, taking small bites. Her cheeks puffed out like a content little hamster. So tasty. Hubby, you eat too." Ethan sat beside her, picking up another bowl of ice cream, but his gaze unconsciously flicked toward the door. Chloe's tear-choked, "I regret it," still echoed in his ears, but it stirred nothing in him. Any resentment from being ignored or used had long been washed away by the noisy, everyday life and the sweet, clingy dependence he'd experienced with Sophia. From that day on, Chloe seemed to have vanished from their lives. There were no hysterical calls, no messages of pressure from her family. Even between the Bennett group and the Johnsons, it was as if the marriage alliance had been tacitly called off. No one mentioned it again. Ethan's life became centered entirely around Sophia's feeding routine. The sofa accumulated more and more pillows, from giant picachas to round strawberry bears, that would trip him up unexpectedly. The television endlessly looped foreign classic cartoons, and Sophia would cry and laugh along with the characters, sometimes dragging him to mimic their actions. The kitchen alternated between the smell of instant noodles and the burnt scent of failed baking attempts. Every time Sophia handed him an overcooked, blackened cookie, her eyes sparkled, and he'd grit his teeth and swallow it, later discreetly ordering fried chicken delivery to make up for it. Sometimes, in the deep quiet of night, Sophia would still hug a pillow, wear that Pikachu nightgown with the wide neckline, stand at his bedroom door rubbing her eyes and softly ask, "Honey, I'm a little scared sleeping alone. Can I just sleep next to you for a bit?" Each time then, Ethan would control the agitation in his heart, expressionless, grab the back of her collar, and send her back to the neighboring room. Only now the motion of closing the door was gentler, and after turning back to his room, he no longer leaned against the door reflecting on himself. Instead, he would remember the little wronged look she'd had, and couldn't help the faint smile pulling at the corner of his mouth. Days passed in that sweet, noisy atmosphere until one weekend afternoon, Sophia suddenly came running over holding her tablet, her eyes shining as she shook his arm. Honey, my model report passed. The supervisor even praised my work. Can we celebrate? I heard a trendy restaurant opened downtown. Their lava cake is super famous." Ethan watched her excitement, his fingers pausing over the document before he shut his laptop and nodded with a smile. "Okay, we'll go wherever you want." The trendy restaurant felt cozy, full of greenery, sunlight streaming through the glass and falling onto the checkered tablecloths. Sophia grabbed the menu and ordered in one breath. Lava cake, strawberry souffle, mango sticky rice, and she didn't forget to order a steak for Ethan. Her little face was full of expectation. "Honey, look at this mango sticky rice. Golden, and it looks so delicious." She pointed at the picture on the menu. Leaning forward, the wide doll collar t-shirt gaped slightly, revealing a small patch of delicate collarbone. Ethan's gaze swept over it instinctively, his Adam's apple bobbed, and he quickly lifted his lemonade to take a sip, his voice a bit muffled. If you like it, eat more." Just then a slight commotion came from the restaurant entrance. Ethan glanced up casually and unexpectedly saw two familiar figures, Chloe in a pearl white skirt suit, her temperament still cool, walking side by side with a man in a light gray casual suit. The man was tall with soft lines in his profile, Liam. Chloe clearly saw them too. Her steps almost imperceptibly faltered, the softness that had briefly appeared because of the person beside her instantly frozen, her expression becoming complex and embarrassed. She quickly shifted her gaze and followed the waiter to a table separated by a partition of plants. Liam followed her line of sight, and his eyes lingered on Ethan's face for a moment, with a barely noticeable edge of hostility, then fell on Sophia. When he took in Sophia's fresh, baby-face features, his eyes visibly stalled before quickly returning to a warm smile. He whispered something to Chloe and steadied her chair for her sit. Sophia was bent over the menu, completely unaware of the undercurrents, until the waiter brought the mango sticky rice. Her eyes lit up and she scooped a big spoonful, offering it to Ethan. "Honey, try this. It's super sweet." Ethan opened his mouth to eat, the cloying mango spread on his tongue. He glanced seemingly casually toward the partition. Chloe sat with her back to them, spine straight but stiff. Liam was attentively pouring water for her, speaking softly, but Chloe's head was bowed slightly, looking distracted. The voices at the next table weren't loud, but the restaurant was quiet, and Ethan still vaguely heard a few words. "Wanqing, don't think too much. That girl is young and careless." Ethan just had a moment of weakness. It's Liam, his voice deliberately gentle. "You deserve someone better. He's not worthy of you." Chloe was silent for a few seconds. Her voice carried a barely perceptible bitterness. But the way he looked at her, it was so serious. That was just novelty. Liam lowered his voice, sounding persuasive. "Wanqing, we've known each other for so many years. I've always been by your side. Give me a chance, and I'll prove that only I'm the one who truly treats you well." Ethan raised an eyebrow and took a sip of his drink. So Liam was trying to take advantage of the situation and pull off the backup boyfriend becomes real boyfriend routine? Before Chloe could answer, a crisp female voice came from the restaurant entrance, full of delighted surprise. Liam, is that really you? A girl in a pale yellow dress hurried in, went straight to Liam, affectionately hooked his arm, and looked up smiling. I just saw your car outside and thought I might have mistaken you. What are you doing here? This is... She finally noticed Chloe across from them and looked her over curiously. Chloe froze instantly. Her face went from pale to ashen. When she looked at Liam again, her eyes were filled with shock and the fury of being made a fool of. Liam, who is she? The whole restaurant's attention turned to them. Liam's face drained of color, cold sweat forming on his brow. Flustered, he tried to push the girl away. Wan Qing, let me explain. She's just what? The pale yellow dress girl pouted unhappily and hugged his arm even tighter. Ma'am, why are you being mean to Liam? I'm his girlfriend. We've been dating for 2 years. Girlfriend, dating for 2 years. Chloe's voice shrilled, tearing in pitch. She gripped the tablecloth so hard her knuckles whitened. Liam, you've been lying to me this whole time? Liam stood with his mouth open but couldn't utter a word, forced to let the girl cling to his arm while everyone stared at them in scrutiny and disbelief. A soft snort of laughter came from nearby. It was Ethan. He leaned back in his chair and watched the farce with amusement, even lifting his glass toward Chloe from a distance. Chloe spun her head sharply. Her eyes were bloodshot, fixed on Ethan with humiliation and rage. Before she could explode, the shame of being betrayed twice overwhelmed her. She grabbed the water glass on the table and hurled it at Liam's face. Splash! Ice water mixed with lemon slices drenched Liam. The girl beside him screamed in fright. The restaurant erupted in commotion. Chloe didn't look at anyone else. Like a frantic trapped animal, she snatched up her clutch and stumbled out of the restaurant amid everyone's gazes. The click of her heels was chaotic and desperate, and she soon disappeared through the door. Liam stood frozen, water dripping from his hair, a large wet patch on his suit, his complexion a grotesque palette. The pale yellow dress girl, furious and anxious, stamped her foot. Liam, what on earth is going on? Who is that woman? Ethan withdrew his gaze and looked down. Sophia was holding a strawberry souffle, her mouth stuffed full, eyes wide and round in shock as if seeing something incredible. There was a little white cream at the corner of her mouth. Finished? Ethan asked with a hint of a smile, reaching out to wipe the cream from her lip. Sophia nodded mechanically, then shook her head, pointed toward the entrance, and mumbled indistinctly, Daddy, did that pretty lady and that uncle, were they fighting? Did that uncle do something wrong? Ethan chuckled softly, ruffling her hair. Yes, he did something wrong, so sister is angry. Sophia nodded, as if she understood, then scooped a big spoonful of souffle into her mouth. Suddenly she stuck out her cream-streaked pinky and looked at Ethan earnestly. Husband, let's make a pinky promise. You must never be like that uncle. You have to always be good to me. Ethan looked at the wobbly little pinky, then into her clear, serious eyes. Something like a feather brushed his heart, and it went soft all the way through. He extended his own pinky, hooked it with hers, and shook it hard. Okay, pinky promise. I'll only be good to you. Sophia immediately lit up, scooped another spoonful of the souffle, and held it to his mouth. Husband, you're the best. Here's a reward. Ethan opened his mouth and ate it. The sweet richness spread from his tongue down to his heart. He glanced out the window. The sun was just right, the street bustling and warm. Chloe, Liam, all those entanglements that used to weigh on him, at this moment faded into irrelevant background. The chattering little wife in front of him, who could only see him, was the sweetest light in his life. Let's go home. He suddenly stood up and, to Sophia's surprise, scooped her up horizontally. Husband, what are you doing? So many people are watching. Sophia quickly wrapped her arms around his neck, her cheeks flushed. Going home to celebrate. Ethan bent close and whispered in her ear, his tone carrying a barely noticeable heat. Celebrate my little treasure passing the test. And celebrate. that we've completely gotten rid of all the obstructive people. Sophia's face turned instantly as red as a ripe tomato. She buried her little head in the hollow of his neck and protested softly. What little treasure! But her arms reflexively clung tighter. Ethan carried her in his arms and strode out of the restaurant. The sunshine bathed them warmly. He looked down at the soft little person in his arms, feeling her real warmth and heartbeat, and the smile at the corner of his mouth deepened. It turned out that escaping those cold calculations and fake alliances and embracing this simple, passionate sweetness was such a happy thing. "George, I've got good news and bad news. Which do you want to hear first?" I put down my paintbrush and looked at my friend Frank. He stood at the studio door with a mysterious air, his face a mix of nervousness and excitement. "Let's start with the bad news. After all, I've gotten used to it these past 3 years. Your painting, Eternity, just sold for a sky-high price. Over $6 million. I frowned. "How is that bad news?" Frank chuckled. "Because it's actually part of the good news. The bad news is, buddy, you might need to see a psychiatrist." "What do you mean?" "A woman who looks exactly like Mary showed up at your art exhibition. I almost thought I was seeing a ghost." The paintbrush slipped from my hand and fell to the floor, splattering paint across the unfinished canvas. "Mary, my late wife, died 3 years ago after accidentally falling off a cliff. I watched with my own eyes as her body was pulled from the water. In that moment, my world completely collapsed." "Stop joking around, Frank. Why would I lie to you? She even left this." Frank handed me a note, with an address and a time written on it. My hand trembled slightly. The handwriting was exactly the same as Mary's. That night, I waited until midnight at the designated cafe. Just as I was about to leave, a familiar figure appeared at the door. Mary? No, it couldn't be her. But every gesture of that woman, from the tips of her hair to her fingertips, was a shadow of Mary. "George, it's been a long time." She sat across from me, and the familiar voice nearly made my heart stop. "Who are you?" I struggled to remain calm. "I'm Mary, your wife." She smiled and reached out her hand. There was a scar on her palm, the mark Mary got when she accidentally cut herself on glass at 15. "Impossible. Mary is already dead." She laughed softly. "That was just an accident. I fell off the cliff and was saved by a reclusive old doctor. I lost my memory from the injuries and only recently remembered everything." As she spoke, tears began to fall with an expression I knew all too well, the look Mary wore whenever she felt wronged. "I know it's hard to believe, but I really am Mary." I couldn't believe my eyes. The shade of lipstick Mary loved most, the faint little mole beneath her left ear, the unconscious habit of rubbing her ring while speaking. Everything was so familiar. Are you really Mary?" She nodded and took a small box out of her bag. "This is the proof." Inside the box was the first piece of jewelry Mary ever designed. A sapphire ring, the only one of its kind, never mass-produced. "I brought it with me that day because I wanted to surprise you." I suddenly stood up and pulled her into my arms. 3 years of longing surged over me like a tide. I held her tightly, afraid that if I let go, she would disappear again. On the way home, she told me about her experiences over the past 3 years. She was rescued by an old doctor in the mountains, lost her memory due to a severe head injury, and lived in a remote mountain village for more than 2 years. It wasn't until she happened to see a poster for my art exhibition that her memory gradually returned. The next day, I took her to see Frank. "Oh my God, it really is you, Mary." Frank stared in astonishment, eyes wide. "Frank, it's been a long time." She greeted him with a smile, exactly as I remembered. Frank pulled me aside and whispered, "Man, this is unbelievable, but I really believe it's her. Who else but Mary could call me by my childhood nickname so accurately? That was something only the two of you knew." A week later, Mary officially returned. We held a small welcome party for her. Her mother was so overwhelmed that she fainted, and when she woke up, she clung to her daughter and refused to let go. But that night, I noticed the first sign that something was off. Mary never ate mangoes because she was severely allergic. Yet the returned Mary absent-mindedly tasted a mango dessert and was perfectly fine. "Aren't you allergic to mangoes?" I asked. She paused for a moment, then quickly laughed and said, "Oh, that old Chinese doctor cured my allergy. He's really amazing." I nodded, but in my heart, I marked the first question mark. Is this really my wife? A month passed quickly, and Mary blended perfectly into our lives. She knew the location of every item in the house, remembered our shared memories, and could even accurately name friends we hadn't contacted in years. But those subtle feelings of discord kept growing. For example, the real Mary liked to listen to classical music, especially Debussy, while designing jewelry. But she would always unconsciously hum along to pop songs. Mary always habitually used her left hand to hold chopsticks, even though she knew it was wrong. She just couldn't change. But she was a standard right-handed user. The most obvious difference appeared that night when I accidentally caught her smoking in the bedroom. The real Mary hated the smell of smoke. Even when I came home from social events with a faint scent of cigarettes, she would frown. "When did you start smoking?" I stood at the doorway, my voice soft. She was clearly startled, hastily snuffing out the cigarette. This is a herbal cigarette for treating insomnia, prescribed by an old Chinese doctor." I nodded, not pressing further, but the doubts in my heart only grew deeper. The next day, I went to find Frank. "Help me check if, in the past 3 years, plastic surgery technology has advanced enough to achieve this level." Frank's eyes widened. "You mean, she's not Mary?" "I'm not sure, but there are always some things that don't add up." 2 days later, Frank brought news. High-end plastic surgery can make faces look similar, but it can't replicate the exact placement of scars or moles. And there's a limit to how well someone can imitate a voice. What if it was a twin? Frank shook his head. "Mary is an only child. We all know that." I decided not to show my feelings for now and to keep observing. A week later, Mary's mother came to my house with astonishing news. "George, Mary is going to have a baby," my mother-in-law told me excitedly. I stood there stunned. Before we got married, Mary had been diagnosed with uterine hypoplasia. The doctor had made it clear she could never get pregnant. This was our shared secret. Not even my mother-in-law knew. How do you know that?" I managed to ask. "Mary told me this morning. She said she already had a checkup. It's been 2 months. My mother-in-law happily grabbed my hand. "It's a blessing from above. Mary survived death, and now she can bring us new life." My heart sank to the bottom. This absolutely could not be Mary. That night, I dug out the hospital's diagnosis certificate in my study, which clearly stated the condition of Mary's uterus. But when I wanted to talk to Mary about it, I found her in the bedroom, excitedly discussing the decoration of the nursery with my mother-in-law. "Mary, could you come here for a moment?" I called her calmly. She followed me into the study, still wearing a blissful smile on her face. "Did you forget about this?" I handed her the diagnosis certificate. She took it and glanced at it, her face instantly turning pale. "George, I can explain." "Explain what?" "Explain that you're not Mary at all." Mother-in-law heard the commotion and walked in. "What's going on with you two?" "Mom, take a look at this." I handed her the proof. My mother-in-law read it, then looked at Mary in astonishment. "What's going on?" "Mary, you can't have children." "Of course she can," I sneered, "because she's not Mary at all." My mother-in-law's face changed dramatically. "What nonsense are you talking about?" "I can explain." She hurriedly grabbed my mother-in-law's hand. "That old Chinese doctor not only saved my life, but also cured my uterine problem. It's a miracle, truly." My mother-in-law looked at me, then at her, hesitating. "George, you're being too paranoid." My mother-in-law finally took her daughter's side. "Mary has come back with great difficulty. You should cherish her, not doubt her." "Yes, George, I know this is hard to accept, but miracles do happen." Tears welled up in her eyes. "Haven't we always wanted a child? Now we can finally have our own baby." I looked at her face, identical to Mary's, yet I became more certain in my heart. This woman was not my wife. "All right, I believe you." I smiled, deciding to go along with their story for now. Let's wait together for this miracle to happen. That night, I secretly contacted a private detective. My mother-in-law gladly accepted her daughter's explanation, even suggesting she move in with us to take care of Mary during her pregnancy. Outwardly, I agreed, but inside I grew even more wary. This was no coincidence. There had to be some kind of plot. "Mom, haven't you always lived in Haicheng? Won't it be hard to get used to living here?" I probed cautiously. "For my grandson, I'm willing to endure any inconvenience," my mother-in-law said firmly. I noticed a fleeting unnatural expression on Mary's face. Could the truth be connected to my mother-in-law? On the 3rd day after my mother-in-law moved in, I discovered more suspicious details. For example, the real Mary never drank coffee, but she and my mother-in-law often enjoyed it together. Also, Mary's favorite movie was Roman Holiday, but she claimed to prefer Titanic. The strangest thing is, Mary used to despise her cousin Tom when she was alive, but now he visits frequently and chats and laughs with Mary as if they're old friends. I told Frank about these discoveries. "Buddy, things are getting more and more suspicious," Frank frowned. "Are you sure you want to keep going like this? Why not just expose her directly? It's not the right time yet. I want to find out what they're really after." The private detective's investigation also made progress. The so-called old Chinese doctor who had saved Mary did not exist at all, and Mary's whereabouts over the past 3 years were completely untraceable. More importantly, the private detective uncovered a shocking fact during the investigation. Mary's cousin Tom was deeply in debt from gambling, and the painting Eternity under my name, worth over $6 million, was his only hope for quick cash. "They're after your painting," the private detective asserted, "and this fake Mary is likely a professional identity fraudster, hired to win your trust." I took a deep breath and decided to take the initiative. That afternoon, I pretended to go out, but secretly returned home and hid in the study. Sure enough, Mary and her cousin Tom were whispering to each other in the living room. "It's taking too long," Tom said irritably. "How much longer until he sells the painting?" "Don't worry," she soothed him. "I'm already pregnant, and now he completely believes I'm Mary. In a little while, I'll say I want to move to a better neighborhood for the sake of the baby, and then we'll naturally need to sell the painting to raise money." "You're really pregnant?" "That wasn't part of the plan. It was an accident, but it works to our advantage. George wants a child so badly." "Does Annie know the truth?" "She only knows we're trying to scam money, not the specific plan. But she hates George, thinks he caused her daughter's death, so she's more than happy to help." I clenched my fists. So my mother-in-law had always believed that Mary's accident was somehow my fault. In fact, we did argue over something trivial that day, and Mary stormed out in anger. I didn't try to stop her. But I never imagined it would be the last time I'd see her. "You don't actually have feelings for George, do you?" Tom suddenly asked. She was silent for a moment. "It's just part of the job. Besides, I owe you, and I won't go back on my word." "Good then. Don't forget how we're splitting the money once we get it." Their conversation confirmed my suspicions. This was all an elaborate scheme, with my eternity as the target. In the days that followed, I pretended everything was normal while secretly making preparations. I contacted the police, arranged for evidence-gathering equipment, and found the last piece Mary had left before she died, a silver necklace that had never been made public, engraved with an anniversary date only the two of us knew. 2 weeks later, my art exhibition was held as scheduled. As planned, Mary brought up the idea of moving, hinting that I could sell Eternity. I pretended to agree and said I would auction the painting on the last day of the exhibition. "This is a surprise I prepared for you," I said on the eve of the exhibition, taking out a delicate box. "To celebrate the new life we're about to begin." She opened the box in surprise, and inside was the silver necklace. "It's beautiful, thank you." She smiled as she prepared to put it on. "Wait," I stopped her. "Aren't you going to look at the engraving on the back?" She turned the necklace over, and her face suddenly went pale. "What's wrong? Don't you like it?" I asked, feigning ignorance. "No, I really like it. It's just, I'm a bit moved." She forced a smile, but didn't know how to explain that she couldn't recognize the significance of that date. "See you tomorrow. Get some good rest, and don't forget to wear this necklace." I kissed her forehead and whispered in her ear, "After all, this is your final design." Her body visibly stiffened for a moment, but she kept smiling. "Of course, I cherish it very much. Tomorrow, the truth will come to light." On the day of the exhibition, the place was packed with people. My painting, Eternity, was displayed in the most prominent spot, right next to the last batch of jewelry designs Mary had created before her death. Mary held my arm, flawlessly playing the role of my wife as always. She had even gone out of her way to wear Mary's favorite white dress and the silver necklace I had given her last night. My mother-in-law and Tom were there too. The three of them exchanged glances from time to time, clearly waiting for the perfect moment. Frank appeared as planned, pretending to be extremely interested in Eternity and asking me about the auction details. "The auction will begin promptly at 4 in the afternoon, I replied with a smile. "This painting means a great deal to me, and I hope it finds someone who truly appreciates it." Mary immediately chimed in. "Yes, although it's hard to part with it, This is a necessary decision for our future. I noticed she glanced at Tom, who gave a barely perceptible nod. At 3:30 in the afternoon, the projector in the center of the exhibition hall lit up. This was the special segment I had arranged. Ladies and gentlemen, I stood in front of eternity. Before the auction begins, I'd like to share a little story about this painting. Mary's photo appeared on the projection screen, a group picture from her last birthday party before she passed away. 3 years ago, my wife Mary died in an accident. I created this painting, Eternity, in her memory. The woman in the painting has her back to the viewer, forever gazing into the distance, symbolizing a longing I can never reach. A soft sigh rippled through the crowd. Mary stood beside me, matching my words with a sorrowful expression. However, a month ago, a miracle happened. I turned to look at Mary. My wife came back. The whole room erupted in astonishment, and many people curiously sized up, Mary. This is my wife, Mary. I took her hand and stepped forward. Back from the dead, it's truly the greatest blessing heaven could have given me. She smiled and nodded to everyone, while my mother-in-law and Tom stood by with smug expressions. However, my tone suddenly shifted. Amidst my joy, a question arose. Is she really Mary? The entire room fell silent. Mary's hand trembled slightly in my palm. So, I did some investigating. The projector switched to a set of comparison photos. On the left was the real Mary. On the right was a photo of her. They look exactly the same, don't they? But I clicked the remote, and the photo was enlarged, the details highlighted. The position of the piercing on the left ear was slightly different, the arch of the eyebrows subtly varied, and the fine lines at the corners of the eyes ran in different directions. These are details that even professional plastic surgery cannot fully replicate. Mary tried to pull her hand away, but I held on tightly. My mother-in-law and Tom also began to grow anxious, glancing toward the exit. More importantly, the real Mary has a feature that cannot be copied. I turned to Mary. The necklace I gave you last night has a date engraved on the back. Can you tell everyone what that date is? She opened her mouth, but no words came out. That was the due date of our first child, the one we lost. I spoke softly, my voice trembling with emotion. Mary designed this necklace to commemorate the baby we never got to meet. The date was our secret, only Mary and I knew. The room fell utterly silent. Mary turned deathly pale, my mother-in-law's eyes widened, and Tom had already started edging toward the door. What surprised me even more, I continued, was that the real Mary could never get pregnant due to an underdeveloped uterus. Yet this Mary claims she's already 2 months along. I let go of her hand and took a step back. So, who are you really? A flicker of despair flashed in Mary's eyes, but she quickly regained her composure. I am Mary, it's just that old Chinese doctor. The non-existent old Chinese doctor, right? I sneered. Just like the non-existent amnesia, the non-existent miraculous recovery. I turned toward the projection screen. Let's see the truth. The screen played the secretly recorded video of her conversation with Tom, their discussion on how to swindle eternity, clearly audible. This isn't. She tried to explain, but my mother-in-law had already rushed forward. Who are you really? My mother-in-law screamed. You're not my daughter? Auntie, stop pretending, I said calmly. You know she's not Mary. You just wanted to get back at me, didn't you? My mother-in-law's face turned pale. I didn't know she was going to impersonate Mary. Tom just said he needed help to scam some money. Police. Don't move. Several plainclothes officers emerged from the crowd, blocking Tom as he tried to escape. Amid the chaos, Mary took the opportunity to shove me aside and run toward the exit. I chased after her and caught up in the parking lot. Tell me, who are you really? She finally stopped, turned to face me, tears welling in her eyes. My name is Luna. I'm an actress. Tom found me and said if I helped trick you out of a painting, he'd give me $1 million. I needed the money for my sister's medical treatment. Why did they choose me? Why Mary? She shook her head. I don't know. They gave me a lot of information, photos, videos, even your chat logs. I was just following the script. The police arrived and took her away. I stood where I was, gazing at the distant sky, my heart a tumult of emotions. Back in the exhibition hall, the crowd had already dispersed, leaving only Frank and a few police officers. It's all been cleared up, Frank walked over. Tom owed money to loan sharks and was desperate. Your mother-in-law always resented you for not saving Mary, so she helped them plan the whole thing. I walked up to eternity, gently caressing the back of the woman in the painting. Mary, I can finally give you an answer. The police left with the evidence. Frank patted me on the shoulder. What do you plan to do next? I took a deep breath. Prepare for the final painting. What will it be called? The Pursuit, I said softly. This time, I'll paint her face, not just her back. After the case was solved, my life seemed to return to where it was 3 years ago. Eternity was temporarily held by the court as crucial evidence. Tom and Luna were arrested for fraud, and my mother-in-law was investigated as an accomplice. The prosecution wants you to testify in court, the officer called to inform me. The trial is scheduled for early next month. I agreed, though I was utterly exhausted inside. After exposing the deception, I thought I would feel the thrill of revenge, but what I felt instead was a profound emptiness. Those days spent with Mary that month had allowed me to feel a trace of warmth in life again, even if that warmth was born of lies. Frank often came to see me, worried I might fall into despair once more. I told him not to worry, that I was working on a new piece, The Pursuit. Are you really going to paint Mary's face from the front? Frank asked curiously. For the past 3 years, you've always refused to do that. It's time, I replied. We can't live in the past forever. I moved out of the apartment I had shared with Mary and returned to the old house in the suburbs, the place where the real Mary and I had first made our home. The dust-laden memories in the house brought me both pain and comfort. Mary's studio remained just as she had left it, design sketches scattered across the table, unfinished jewelry drafts pinned to the drawing board. One afternoon, while sorting through Mary's belongings, I discovered an encrypted external hard drive. After several attempts, I finally unlocked it using our wedding anniversary as the password. Inside were backups of Mary's design works, along with some personal photos and videos. One folder in particular caught my attention. Inside a folder named Plan was a series of jewelry design sketches, labeled George's Birthday Special Project. It was then I remembered that, in the months before Mary passed away, she often spoke mysteriously about giving me an unparalleled birthday surprise. Leafing through these design drafts, I couldn't help but be moved to tears. Mary had planned to design a jewelry collection inspired by my paintings over the years, with each piece corresponding to a representative work from my artistic career. The last page was a sketch of a ring, with a dark red stone set in the center, its edges adorned with tiny diamonds, closely resembling the sunrise in my early work, Dawn. This is blood amber? I examined the notes carefully, confirming the name of this rare gemstone. Mary's designs had always been bold, but blood amber is extremely rare in the Chinese market, almost impossible to acquire. How did she obtain such a material? As I continued searching, I found a series of email correspondence screenshots. Mary had actually contacted a gemstone dealer in Myanmar, commissioning the blood amber specifically for this ring. The last email showed that the gem had already been shipped, but the date was exactly 1 week before Mary's death. I immediately called Frank. Help me check if there was a package sent from Myanmar 3 years ago, addressed to Mary. 2 days later, Frank brought news. The package did exist, but since no one signed for it, it was returned. However, according to the shipping records, it was resent a month ago, this time addressed to you. What? I was completely confused. I haven't received any package. Check your old apartment? Frank suggested. Back at my old apartment, the manager told me there was indeed a package, but it had been signed for by Mary. She said it was a surprise for you, so she didn't notify you, the manager explained. This meant Luna had taken the blood amber. I rushed to the detention center and requested to see Luna. Separated by glass, she looked much more haggard than the last time we met, but still wore that face so similar to Mary's. What are you doing here? She asked coldly. A month ago, you signed for a package from Myanmar. There was a blood amber inside. I want to know where it is. She looked surprised. How did you know? Tom asked me to sign for it. He said it was some precious gem. He took it. My heart sank. Tom was deep in gambling debt. A precious blood amber would be a windfall for him. He had probably sold it long ago. That blood amber is very important to me, I said softly. It was the last gift my wife left me. Luna was silent for a moment, then suddenly said, maybe it's not that bad. Tom said the stone has flaws, its value is greatly reduced, and he hasn't found a suitable buyer yet. Hope was rekindled. If Tom hadn't sold the blood amber yet, Maybe there was still a chance to get it back. Do you know where he might hide it? Luna hesitated for a moment. He has a safe deposit box in a self-storage facility on the east side of the city. After getting the address, I immediately contacted the officer in charge of the case and explained the situation. Since Tom was involved in a large sum of money, the police quickly approved the search request. "Mr. George, we've found the safe deposit box," the officer said over the phone. "Inside, we did find the blood amber you described, as well as some other evidence." A few hours later, I retrieved the blood amber at the police station. It was even more beautiful than I had imagined. Within the dark red core, wisps of mist seemed to swirl, shifting strangely under the light. This was the birthday gift Mary had so carefully chosen for me, waiting for 3 years. Back home, I carefully placed the blood amber beside the canvas of the pursuit. The painting was already more than half finished, Mary's face emerging from the blur into clarity, yet it still felt like something was missing. Watching the blood amber glimmer faintly under the light, I suddenly understood how I should complete the painting. The creation of the pursuit entered its final stage. I decided to break convention and incorporate the blood amber into the artwork. This would not only be a portrait, but a hybrid piece that fused painting with the art of jewelry. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Frank frowned. "That blood amber is priceless." "That's exactly why," I said firmly. "Mary chose it for me. She wanted to inspire an unparalleled masterpiece. I will fulfill her wish." For 2 whole weeks, I worked day and night, neglecting sleep and food. I cut the blood amber into thin slices and inlaid them at the spot of Mary's eyes on the canvas, making her gaze truly come alive. I used a special technique to blend the surrounding paint, creating a harmonious transition with the gemstone. From certain angles, the entire painting seemed to be imbued with life, and Mary's expression would shift depending on where the viewer stood. On the day I finished the piece, Frank brought news. Luna had been sentenced to 3 years in prison, but due to her good attitude in confessing, she might serve only a year and a half. Tom, involved in multiple fraud cases, was sentenced to 7 years. My mother-in-law, as an accomplice, received a suspended sentence. "The case is finally over," Frank said. "Are you planning to exhibit your painting?" "Yes. Next month there will be a solo exhibition at the National Art Museum, and The Pursuit will be the grand finale." The curator couldn't stop praising this piece, believing it represents the innovative direction of contemporary art and marks the pinnacle of my career. Indeed, this painting, which incorporates Mary's jewelry design concepts, is in some sense a creation we made together. On the eve of the exhibition, I checked the arrangement in the gallery alone one last time, making sure every piece was perfectly lit and positioned. When I reached The Pursuit, I couldn't help but stop and gaze at it. Mary's face was vividly lifelike, her eyes inlaid with blood amber gleaming under the spotlight, as if she were smiling at me. For the first time in 3 years, I faced her directly, no longer painting only her back. "Mr. George," a stranger's voice called from behind. "Sorry to disturb you, but the gallery has been cleared." He turned around to see a young woman dressed in the museum's staff uniform. "And you are?" "I'm the new curator, responsible for security in your exhibition area," she explained with a smile. "I really like your work, especially this piece, The Pursuit." "Thank you." I nodded. "I'll be leaving soon." She didn't leave, but continued to gaze at the painting. "That red gem is beautiful, almost as if it's alive." "It's blood amber," I explained, "a very rare gemstone." "I know," she said softly, "top-grade blood amber from Myanmar, containing plant fossils, extremely rare." I looked at her in surprise. "You know a lot about jewelry?" She smiled. "I studied jewelry design. I'm just working part-time here." For some reason, Mary suddenly came to mind. She, too, had an almost obsessive passion for and expertise in gemstones. "If you don't mind me asking, who is the woman in this painting?" she asked. "My wife," I replied. "She passed away 3 years ago. She was a jewelry designer." "I'm very sorry," she said sincerely, then gestured toward the blood amber. "This gem must mean a great deal to you. It was the last birthday gift she chose for me before she died, but I only found it recently." She nodded thoughtfully. "Setting it into her portrait is the best way to remember her." For some reason, talking with this unfamiliar woman brought me a strange sense of calm. Perhaps it was her love for jewelry that reminded me of Mary. "Sorry, I have to continue my rounds." She glanced at her watch. "See you tomorrow, Mr. George." "See you tomorrow," I replied, watching her leave. On the way home, I felt an unusual peace. The completion of The Pursuit seemed to mark the end of my search for Mary as well, not forgetting, but remembering her forever in another way. The next day, the exhibition's opening ceremony attracted numerous figures from the art world and the media. The Pursuit undoubtedly became the center of attention, with people marveling at this innovative form of artistic expression. Amid the crowd, I noticed that curator standing aside, watching as well. Sunlight streamed through the skylight of the gallery, falling upon her, and for a fleeting moment, I thought I saw Mary's shadow. No, I shook my head, warning myself not to be deceived by mere resemblance. There would never be another Mary in this world, just as there would never be another unique blood amber. After the exhibition, The Pursuit was purchased by an anonymous collector for an astronomical price. I donated all the proceeds to a foundation supporting students in jewelry design, establishing a scholarship in Mary's name. Life slowly moved forward, and I began to accept new commissions and create new works. Occasionally, I would think of that curator with a unique insight into jewelry, wondering if she was still working at the art museum. Until one day, I received an email from HL. There were no words, only an image. A sketch of a ring design, the style strikingly similar to Mary's unfinished series. My heart raced as I replied immediately. Who is this? The response came quickly. Yesterday, you brushed past me by the cafe on the street corner, but you didn't recognize me. If you want to know more, wait for me at the museum entrance at noon tomorrow. Is it that librarian? How could she have a design so reminiscent of Mary's style? Filled with anxiety and anticipation, I decided to accept the invitation and find out for myself. The next day at noon, I arrived at the art museum half an hour early. The sun was shining, and small groups of visitors were coming and going from the exhibition hall, but there was no sign of the mysterious person. Just as I began to suspect this might be some kind of prank, a faint trace of perfume drifted by, a scent unfamiliar to me, yet it inexplicably reminded me of Mary. Mr. George, thank you for coming. The voice behind me made me turn around. It was the curator. Today, she wasn't wearing her uniform, but a simple white dress, completely different from Mary's style when she was alive. Did you send the email? I asked directly. She nodded. There are some things I want to tell you, but not here. Will you come with me? We walked through the small park beside the art museum and arrived at a secluded cafe. The whole time, I kept observing her. Her mannerisms, the way she walked, none of it resembled Mary. Yet her sensitivity to detail and her focused attention gave me a strange sense of familiarity. Who are you, really? The moment we sat down, I couldn't wait to ask. My name is Nicole. She looked me straight in the eye. I'm Mary's student. This answer caught me off guard. Mary had indeed taught jewelry design part-time at the Design Academy before she passed away, but she had never mentioned having any particularly close students. I took her advanced design class the year before she passed, Nicole explained. Her guidance benefited me for a lifetime. That still doesn't explain why your designs resemble her style so much, I said, half convinced. Nicole took a folder out of her bag. These are all notes from Ms. Nicole's class and her feedback on my work. You can look at the handwriting and confirm that it's really hers. I carefully examined the materials. It was indeed Mary's handwriting. There were even traces of the pale purple ink she habitually used. Before Ms. Nicole passed away, she was guiding me on my graduation project, Nicole continued. The theme was interwoven light and shadow, blending Eastern and Western aesthetic elements. She gave me a lot of valuable advice, and even showed me a sketch from a private project she was working on at the time. George's special birthday project? I blurted out. Nicole's eyes widened in surprise. You know about it? I only found out recently. I briefly explained the origin of the blood amber. I knew that blood amber would eventually find its way back to you, Nicole said with a smile. Nicole always said it was a destined gift. Is that why you contacted me? Because you saw the blood amber? Nicole was silent for a moment, as if choosing her words carefully. Not entirely. After Nicole passed away, I've been trying to carry on the design philosophy she taught me. Some time ago, I happened to see the news about your eternity being stolen, and then I saw someone impersonating Nicole. I thought I should tell you a few things. She took a letter out of her bag. This is the last letter Nicole gave me after class before she passed away. She said if her surprise plan went smoothly, I should show you this letter. If anything went wrong and she was gone, I should still make sure you see it. I took the envelope. It was indeed Mary's handwriting, and it read, "To my dearest husband." The envelope had already been opened. I didn't know what was in the letter at the time. I just kept it as Nicole instructed, Nicole explained. It wasn't until I saw the news that I opened it. I hope you won't blame me. I carefully took out the letter paper and unfolded it to read. Dear George, if you are reading this letter, perhaps my surprise plan has gone awry. Don't worry, it's just that the plan has changed, and the form of the gift may be different now. The blood amber I picked for you is said to be known as the Eye of Rebirth. Legend has it that looking at the world through it reveals truths that are often overlooked. I hope it can become a turning point in your artistic career, leading you to see new possibilities. All these years, your paintings have always depicted backs, as if you're afraid to face something head-on. I hope this gemstone will give you the courage to paint the front, to capture true emotions. No matter what happens, please remember, love does not disappear, it merely changes form, like this blood amber, which, after millions of years, transforms from resin into a gem, yet still shines. Forever loving you, Mary. The handwriting became a bit messy at the end, as if written in a hurry. I stroked the paper, as if I could feel Mary's emotions at that moment. Thank you, I said, my voice choked with emotion. This means a lot to me. You're welcome. I'm just fulfilling Ms. Nicole's request, Nicole said with a smile. Actually, there's one more thing I'd like to ask your help with. What is it? I'd like to apply for the Mary Scholarship you established, she said, taking a design portfolio out of her bag. This is my graduation project, combining Ms. Nicole's ideas with my own innovations. As I flipped through the portfolio, I was surprised to find that while these designs bore traces of Mary's influence, they also possessed a unique style and innovative touches. In particular, a series called Metamorphosis cleverly combined jewelry with transformable elements, allowing the pieces to change form according to the wearer's mood and occasion. This is outstanding, I praised sincerely. Mary would be proud of you. A hint of joy flashed in Nicole's eyes. Really? I've always worried I couldn't live up to her expectations. You've already moved beyond the learning stage and developed your own style. That's exactly what she hoped to see. As we talked, sunlight streamed through the window and fell on Nicole. In that moment, I seemed to understand something. When Mary spoke of love changing its form, perhaps she wasn't just referring to the blood amber, but also to her passion for art and its legacy. Luna tried to impersonate Mary by mimicking her appearance, but she could never truly replicate who she was. Nicole, on the other hand, looked nothing like Mary, yet she inherited a part of her artistic vision and spirit. Perhaps this is the true gift Mary left me, not the blood amber, but a new possibility, a path out of the past. Nicole's graduation exhibition was held in a small gallery. Though the space was modest, it was exquisitely arranged. Her works were divided into 3 series, representing the past, the present, and the future, forming a complete narrative. This is a brilliant idea, I sincerely praised. From tradition to contemporary and then to the future, it showcases the evolution and possibilities of jewelry design. Nicole smiled and nodded. This was inspired by teacher Nicole. She always says that good design should look back at history, be grounded in the present, and look forward to the future. As I walked through the exhibition hall, I noticed a special display case in the corner, containing only one piece, a seemingly simple ring with a small red gemstone set in the center. This is. I leaned in to read the label, which said, in memory, dedicated to teacher Mary. Yes, I made it from a small piece of blood amber I bought with my own savings, Nicole explained. It can't compare to the quality of yours, but it's also from Myanmar. I examined the design of the ring closely. Clean, powerful lines with fine silver threads encircling the blood amber, as if protecting the central gem, yet also seeming to radiate light outward. This is very similar to Mary's final design style, I said softly, but it also has your own unique touch. I wanted to create a piece that could both commemorate teacher Nicole and showcase my own style, Nicole explained. The blood amber represents her influence, while the outer design is the direction of my own development. The exhibition attracted quite a few industry insiders, including some well-known figures from the jewelry design world. After viewing the exhibition, an older female designer approached Nicole and offered her an internship opportunity. I stood by, genuinely happy for Nicole. In the evening, as the exhibition was drawing to a close, Frank arrived as well. Seeing me with Nicole, he gave me a knowing smile. New friend? He asked me quietly. Mary's student, I explained simply. Very talented. Frank nodded without asking further questions. After touring the exhibition, he gave high praise to Nicole's work. It blends traditional and modern elements, demonstrating both technical skill and artistic expression, quite rare. Nicole thanked him politely. This wouldn't have been possible without the guidance of teacher Nicole and teacher George. After the exhibition, the three of us went to a nearby restaurant for dinner. During the meal, Frank talked about recent trends in the art market, while Nicole shared her insights on contemporary jewelry design. The conversation was light and pleasant, and I realized it had been a long time since I had relaxed and chatted with others like this. After a few rounds of drinks, Frank received an urgent call and left early. Only Nicole and I remained in the restaurant, and the atmosphere suddenly became a bit quiet. Mr. George, Nicole hesitated for a moment before speaking. I've always had a question I wanted to ask you. What is it? After you finished The Pursuit, what are you planning to create next? The question caught me off guard. To be honest, ever since The Pursuit, I haven't had any new inspiration. That painting seemed to have drained all my emotions and creativity. I haven't decided yet, I answered honestly. It might take some time to find a new direction. Nicole nodded thoughtfully. Nicole once said that the hardest thing for an artist isn't creating a stunning masterpiece, but finding a way forward after reaching the peak. She really did say that, I recalled with a smile. Mary always saw further than I did. Maybe, Nicole said softly, you could try a new direction that combines your work with jewelry design? Like in The Pursuit, but taking it even further. I recalled what Mary mentioned in her letter about seeing new possibilities, and suddenly I was inspired. You mean, creating a series of works that combine painting and jewelry? Exactly. Nicole said excitedly, your paintings create emotion in two-dimensional space, while jewelry gives it tangible form in the three-dimensional world. The combination of the two would have an astonishing effect. The more we talked, the more engaged we became, even sketching a few concept designs on the restaurant's napkins. Nicole's ideas were fresh and bold, perfectly aligning with my artistic vision, yet bringing a new perspective. As we left the restaurant, Nicole suddenly said, I have to confess something. I looked at her in confusion. I reached out to you not only to deliver Nicole's letter, but also for a personal reason. I hope to learn from you, she said candidly. I want to become a designer like Nicole, someone who not only creates beautiful works but also perfectly blends art with emotion. Her sincerity moved me. You're already on that path, and you're doing very well. Then, may I consult you often? She asked a little nervously. Of course, I'd be delighted. On the way home, a series of new works already began to take shape in my mind. A cross-disciplinary art that fuses painting and jewelry, both as a tribute to Mary and as a new starting point in my artistic career. That night, I had a dream. In the dream, Mary stood in a halo of blood-red light, smiling at me and saying, See, I knew you would find a new direction. When I woke up, I got out of bed immediately and began sketching for the new series. I decided to name it Rebirth. Not only representing the ancient life forever preserved in blood amber, but also symbolizing the rebirth of my artistic career, as well as the inheritance and development of Mary's artistic vision. A week later, I submitted a new series proposal to the gallery and received an enthusiastic response. The curator even suggested holding a special exhibition themed Between Dimensions, a dialogue between painting and jewelry. For this project, I invited Nicole to join the team as a jewelry design consultant. She had just graduated from design school and was both excited and nervous about the opportunity. Am I really up to the task? She asked me in the studio. You understand Mary's design philosophy better than anyone, I assured her. That's exactly what I need. In the days that followed, we worked at a feverish pace. We created during the day and discussed at night, sometimes even working through until dawn. Nicole's ideas flowed endlessly, and I transformed those thoughts into concrete artistic expressions. In the process, I rediscovered the pure joy of creation that I hadn't felt in a long time. One late night, when we finally finished the design for our first piece, Nicole clapped her hands excitedly. This is amazing. Teacher Nicole will definitely love it. At the mention of Mary, she suddenly realized her slip and looked at me nervously. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. It's all right, I said with a smile. I think Mary really would like it. She always hoped I could step out of my comfort zone and try new ways of expressing myself. Nicole let out a sigh of relief, then hesitantly asked, Professor George, may I ask you a personal question? What is it? When you faced the woman impersonating Professor Nicole, how? How did you see through her? I mean, from the news reports, she seemed like an exact copy of Professor Nicole. I pondered for a moment. Superficial resemblance is easy to achieve, but a true personality cannot be duplicated. Mary's perception of art, her attitude toward life, the way she handled details, these were all unique. Just like a work of art, Nicole mused, no matter how perfect a replica is, it can never capture the soul of the original. Exactly. We worked through the night again, and finally established the overall framework for the Rebirth series. 7 pieces, each blending elements of painting and jewelry, together telling a story of loss and recovery, death and rebirth. As our collaboration deepened, my relationship with Nicole gradually shifted from teacher and student to partners, both mentor and friend. Sometimes, when the light traced the gentle contours of her focused profile, I would unconsciously think of Mary. But soon, I realized that this association wasn't due to any physical resemblance, but rather that same dedication and passion for art. George, you look much more spirited lately, Frank remarked at a gathering. It's been a while since I've seen you so full of life. Yeah, the new project has helped me rediscover the joy of creating. Nicole's a good girl, Frank said meaningfully. Talented, and she really understands you. I understood his implication, but just smiled without responding. There was indeed a special understanding between Nicole and me, but it was more rooted in our shared passion for art than anything else. At least for now. The creation of the Rebirth series took 3 months, longer than expected, but the results were stunning. Each piece was a perfect fusion of painting and jewelry art, offering both the pleasure of viewing as a flat image and the discovery of 3-dimensional effects brought by the jewelry elements from different angles. A week before the exhibition opened, I received an unexpected visitor, Luna. She had served her sentence and was released early. She looked much more haggard than the last time we met, but her eyes were clearer. I came to apologize to you in person. She stood at the studio door, her voice low, for everything I have done. I didn't respond immediately, but simply invited her in to sit down. I know that an apology can't make up for the loss, she continued, but I want you to know that I truly regret it. How is your sister's illness? I asked. She looked up in surprise. You know. I guessed. You said you needed money for a reason, and I think that must have been true. Yes, she nodded. My sister's surgery was a success, and now she's fully recovered. For the past 3 years, I've been thinking about how to make up for my mistakes. Even though I may never be able to. I was silent for a moment, then said, in a way, your appearance actually helped me. What do you mean? It forced me to confront the past, to re-examine my memories with Mary, and ultimately to find a way forward. I pointed to the sketches of the Rebirth series on the wall and briefly explained this new project. Luna listened quietly, a look of genuine respect in her eyes. I'm glad you were able to find a new beginning from that nightmare, she said at last. I hope I can find my own path to rebirth as well. As she left, she handed me a small package. These are some simple pieces of jewelry I made in prison. The craftsmanship is rough, but each one represents my remorse and blessings. I hope you can accept them. Opening the package, I found several small trinkets handmade from fine wire and colorful glass beads. Though simple, it was clear the creator had poured their heart into them. Nicole happened to come into the studio at that moment. Seeing the trinkets, she asked curiously, "What are these?" I told her about Luna's visit. You forgave her? Nicole was a bit surprised. Not exactly forgiveness. I said thoughtfully, it's more like understanding. Everyone has their own hardships and choices. What's important is how we learn and grow from our mistakes. Nicole nodded pensively, picking up a piece of jewelry to examine it closely. The craftsmanship is rough, but the concept is ingenious. This person seems to have a talent for design. Perhaps, I said, everyone has the possibility of being reborn. On the day of the exhibition opening, numerous figures from the art and jewelry worlds gathered together. The Rebirth series received unprecedented acclaim. Critics called it a model of cross-disciplinary art, and the gallery owner was overjoyed, announcing plans for a nationwide tour. In the crowd, I saw Luna. She was dressed simply, standing quietly in a corner, admiring the exhibits. Our eyes met in the air. She nodded slightly, then walked away. Who was that? Nicole asked, standing beside me. Someone searching for rebirth, I replied. Nicole seemed to understand and asked no more. We stood side by side before the pursuit, watching the blood amber refract a strange light under the lamps, like the silent burning of life's flame. Thank you, I whispered to Nicole. Without you, this series might never have come into being. It was your philosophy that guided us, teacher Nicole, she replied modestly. I was just fortunate enough to be the messenger. In that moment, I suddenly understood the true meaning of what Mary had written in her letter. Love has changed its form. Love exists not only in memory and longing, but also in inheritance and innovation, shining brightly in every spark of artistic creation. And I, at last, had learned how to begin anew after loss, to embrace rebirth while still searching. The success of the exhibition exceeded everyone's expectations. In just 1 month, the Rebirth series was reported on by major media outlets and even attracted the attention of the international art world. A renowned auction house extended an olive branch to me, hoping to include several pieces in their annual highlight auction. This is an unprecedented opportunity, Frank said excitedly. If the deal goes through, you'll become a top player in the contemporary art market. I wasn't particularly concerned with commercial success, but I did feel the joy of having my work widely recognized. More importantly, this series opened up a new artistic path for me, freeing me from the creative shackles of the past 3 years. Nicole benefited as well. As the project's jewelry design consultant, she received high praise from the industry. Several well-known jewelry brands reached out to her, hoping she would join their design teams. Which offer are you planning to accept? One night, as we were tidying up the studio together, I asked her. To be honest, I'm still hesitating. Nicole paused her work. These are all great opportunities, but what? But I want to keep working with you. She looked straight into my eyes. Rebirth is just the beginning, isn't it? Her candor surprised me a little. Indeed, the success of this series had opened up many new creative possibilities for us, but I wasn't sure if I should continue such a close working relationship. You should consider your own career development, I said tactfully. These opportunities are very rare for young designers. Nicole seemed to sense my hesitation and nodded gently. I understand. In the days that followed, we were both busy and rarely had the chance to talk alone. A week later, Nicole told me she had decided to accept an invitation from a French jewelry brand and would be going to Paris to work for 2 years. Congratulations, I said sincerely. It's a very good choice. Thank you, she replied with a smile, though a fleeting, elusive emotion flashed in her eyes. I think this is the best arrangement for both of us. Before Nicole left, we held a small farewell party. Frank, the curator, and a few mutual friends came. The atmosphere was warm, tinged with a hint of sadness. After a few rounds of drinks, Frank found an opportunity to pull me aside. Are you really going to just let her go like this? What do you mean? I pretended not to understand. Don't play dumb, man, Frank said bluntly. You have feelings for her. That's obvious. That's just professional rapport, I argued. Is that so? Frank looked at me meaningfully. Then why have you been so distracted ever since she decided to go to France? I was at a loss for words. In fact, these past few days I had indeed felt an inexplicable sense of loss, but I kept telling myself it was only because I had lost an excellent partner. I know what you're worried about, Frank lowered his voice. You feel like you're letting Mary down, don't you? I remained silent. He had touched upon the deepest concern in my heart. Mary has been gone for 3 years now. Frank gently patted my shoulder. She would want you to be happy. After the party ended, I walked Nicole home. The night was tranquil as water, and the city lights flowed around us. Thank you for your help and guidance these past few months. Nicole stopped at the entrance of her apartment building. This experience has meant so much to me. I should be thanking you, I said sincerely. Without you, the Rebirth series would never have been completed. We fell into silence, as if both searching for the right words to say goodbye. My flight is the morning after tomorrow, Nicole finally said. I still have some things to take care of tomorrow, so this is probably the last time we'll see each other. 2 years will pass quickly. I tried to make my voice sound light. Paris is a beautiful city. You'll like it there. She nodded, a complex emotion flickering in her eyes. Professor George, there's something I've always wanted to tell you, but never found the right opportunity. What is it? I chose to study jewelry design because I saw Nicole's works. She took a deep breath, or more precisely, Because I saw the pieces Nicole designed for you. The way she perfectly fused love and art moved me deeply. I didn't know that, I said in surprise. I've always hoped that one day I could be like Nicole, creating art filled with emotion. Nicole continued, her words coming faster, as if afraid she might lose her courage. But now I realize that what I want even more is to create for a specific person, just like Nicole created for you. I understood her implication, and my heart suddenly began to race. Nicole, please don't respond, she gently interrupted me. I just wanted you to know before I leave. No matter how you feel right now, remember that starting over is not a betrayal of the past, but a way of cherishing life. With that, she rose up on her tiptoes and softly kissed my cheek, then quickly turned and walked into the apartment building, leaving me standing alone in the night, my mind in turmoil. After returning home, I tossed and turned, unable to sleep, replaying Nicole's words and that gentle kiss over and over in my mind. Suddenly, I remembered a small box in the study, where Mary's last complete letter was kept, a letter I had found while sorting through her belongings. But at the time, overwhelmed by grief, I never had the courage to open. Now, I finally mustered the courage to walk into the study and retrieve that delicate little box from the depths of the drawer. Inside lay a pale pink letter, bearing Mary's familiar handwriting. Dearest George, by the time you read this letter, you may find yourself at a crossroads in life, hesitating between moving forward or staying where you are. My greatest wish is that you can move bravely through life, as freely as your brush glides across the canvas. Love is not a shackle, but a liberation. Memory is not a burden, but a source of strength. If one day you meet someone who can rekindle the light in your eyes, please don't hesitate because of your longing for me. True love is wishing happiness for the other, even if there is no longer a place for oneself in that happiness. Remember, the days we loved each other were complete, with no need for regrets. And now, it's time to paint a new picture, my beloved. Forever loving you. Mary. Tears blurred my vision. It was as if Mary had foreseen my current situation and had already given me her blessing. She was always like this, always able to see further and more clearly than I could. At that moment, I made up my mind. Early the next morning, I drove straight to Nicole's apartment. Professor George? Nicole opened the door in surprise, clearly not expecting me. I have something to say to you. I looked her straight in the eyes, not as your teacher, but as George. I handed her Mary's letter. Nicole read it carefully, her expression shifting from surprise to being moved, and finally, her eyes grew moist. She truly was an extraordinary woman, Nicole said softly, handing the letter back to me. Yes, she was. I nodded. That's exactly why I believe her words. Nicole, cancel your plans for Paris. Stay and continue our collaboration, will you? Nicole looked at me in shock. Are you serious? I've never been more serious, I said quietly. Rebirth is not just the name of an artwork, it's a possibility in life. Are you willing to explore that possibility with me? Her answer was a firm embrace, warm and real, like the first ray of sunlight after a long winter. In that moment, I felt as if Mary was somewhere, smiling down on us, blessing this new beginning. Life is like that blood amber, enduring countless ages of change and sedimentation, ultimately transforming into an eternal radiance. And I, at last, understood what true pursuit is, what true rebirth means. A year later, Nicole and I unveiled our second joint project, Interwoven, at the National Art Museum. This series was even bolder and more innovative than Rebirth, blending Eastern and Western aesthetics with various art forms. Critics hailed it as a significant breakthrough in contemporary art. At the opening ceremony, Nicole held my arm as we faced the media interviews and congratulations from the audience together. She wore a simple white dress, and around her neck was the Eye of Rebirth necklace we designed together. She completed the jewelry part based on my painting. Your collaboration seems even more in sync than your last project, a reporter asked with a suggestive smile. Nicole glanced at me, and we exchanged a smile. Yes, both in art and in life, we found the perfect balance. This indirect answer drew a round of good-natured laughter from the reporters present. My relationship with Nicole was no longer a secret, but we always kept a low profile, letting the public's attention remain focused on our artistic creations. After the exhibition, we drove out to a small hill in the countryside. There stood an ancient oak tree, beneath which Mary's ashes were laid to rest. This was the place we chose, rather than a traditional cemetery, natural, peaceful, just like Mary herself. Mary, The exhibition was a great success today, I said softly to the stone beneath the tree. Nicole's designs were admired by everyone, just as you once predicted. Nicole crouched down and placed a bouquet of white daisies in front of the stone. Teacher Nicole, I've been working hard to become the kind of designer you hoped I would be. I hope you can be proud of me. A gentle breeze stirred, and the oak's leaves rustled softly, as if it were Mary's reply. On the way back, Nicole suddenly said, I've been thinking about something. What is it? If that woman who pretended to be Ms. Nicole hadn't appeared, you might never have found the blood amber, never created the pursuit, and we might never have met. Her words made me fall into deep thought. Indeed, it was the series of events triggered by that deception that ultimately led to everything now. It feels as if, in the unseen, some force has been orchestrating it all. Perhaps that's the irony of fate, I said softly. Sometimes, the worst beginnings can lead us to the best endings. When I returned home, I received an unexpected package. Upon opening it, I found a delicate little box containing a handmade ring. Though simple, the craftsmanship had improved greatly compared to the pieces I had seen before. There was a note attached. Mr. George, thank you for your kindness and understanding a year ago, which gave me the courage to start over. Now I have found a job at a small jewelry shop, and my life is gradually getting back on track. This ring represents my gratitude, and I wish you happiness and well-being on your new path. Luna, I handed the ring to Nicole. After examining it carefully, she remarked, her skills have improved a lot. She truly is talent. Some mistakes in life shouldn't become permanent scars, I sighed. Everyone deserves a second chance. That night, we sat in the studio, discussing ideas for the next series. Nicole suddenly proposed a bold idea. I was thinking, maybe we could try connecting the different stages of our work to create a complete narrative. From eternity to quest, then to rebirth, and intertwined, they're actually different phases in a person's life journey. You mean? A complete story about loss, searching, rebirth, and integration, she explained excitedly, ultimately asking what is the most precious treasure in life. Love. I finished her sentence, no matter what form it takes. Nicole nodded, her eyes sparkling with creative fire. We could call it the forms of love, an unprecedented artistic exploration. Sounds like a long-term, ambitious project. We have time, she smiled, holding my hand. We have so much time. In that moment, I felt a powerful surge of creative inspiration, just like when I first began my artistic career years ago, filled with passion and possibility. But this time, I was not facing the blank canvas alone. 2 years later, the Forms of Love series was exhibited simultaneously in the world's 5 greatest art museums, causing an unprecedented sensation. Critics called it a milestone in contemporary art history, blending painting, sculpture, jewelry design, and other art forms to create an entirely new artistic language. The final piece of the exhibition was titled Eternal Ring, a massive circular canvas depicting every form of love in life, familial, platonic, romantic, and the love for art itself. The edge of the canvas was inlaid with gemstones of various sizes, and under certain lighting, these gems would cast light onto specific parts of the canvas, revealing another hidden layer of patterns. The centerpiece of this work is a massive blood amber. Through intricate optical design, the light it projects perfectly outlines 2 embracing figures. One is Mary, the other is Nicole, symbolizing the intersection of past and present, the fusion of memory and rebirth. On the closing day of the exhibition, in front of the Eternal Ring, I knelt on one knee and proposed to Nicole. The ring was crafted from the very blood amber Mary had once prepared for me, designed by my own hand and fashioned by the finest jeweler. This ring carries the memories of the past and the hopes for the future, I whispered softly. Nicole, will you be the eternal ring in my life? Her tears sparkled under the spotlight. I will. Amidst the cheers, I remembered what Mary once said, love does not disappear, it merely changes its form. Yes, love does not disappear. It exists in memories, in art, in every rebirth and new beginning. It traverses time and crosses space, like that blood amber which, after millions of years, still shines, forever retaining the original warmth and brilliance of life. This is the answer I have been searching for all along. Between loss and gain, Between seeking and rebirth, love remains constant, only appearing in different forms along the journey of life. And all we need to do is bravely accept this gift, no matter how it comes to us. On the day of the wedding, the sky was a clear, washed blue. Beneath the ancient oak tree that had watched over Mary, we exchanged our vows. A gentle breeze stirred, making the leaves whisper as if blessings were drifting in from another world. No matter when or where, Nicole said softly, we'll always remember that it was she who brought us together. Yes, I squeezed her hand, and we will always cherish this gift. In the brilliant sunlight, the blood amber ring gleamed, radiant as life itself, enduring the passage of time, yet still shining bright.